Hello, everybody. Good evening. I'm going to be doing something a little bit different and I guess out of my comfort zone for how I usually like to run my streams. So today, I went to the hospital and I got an arthrogram. So an arthrogram is when they take a needle and they shove it into your muscle down towards the bone and they fill it with lidocaine. And then after the lidocaine, they go through and they inject a dye. After that, I had 2 MRIs. Hi, Bailey. I had a MRI with contrast on my hip and an MRI with contrast on my back. I can't lift my right leg at all. It's like, it feels like, when you get a funny bone, like when you hit your funny bone, it feels like that in my hip flexor. Like, I can lift this one, but I can't lift it because of what they injected. Paul, thank you for sharing the stream. But I am feeling better. I'm too restless to be able to sit down and game. So I thought I would read you guys a story. So this is The Name of the Wind from the Kingkiller Chronicles from Patrick Rothfuss. He hasn't finished a series, and I don't think he ever will. The second book, the first book I really enjoy, Hi Ben. It's a little convoluted in the beginning, like the first couple chapters. He has too many words and way too many descriptors. That's right, I'm saying it. Hi, Hugo. And then later on, the story gets like really, really good. The second book gets a little weird at one part, and you're like 4 chapters, and why is this even a thing? But we don't have a third book yet, so hi, Hugo. All good. What is this? Oh. That might have been a wee little spider trying to nest in my my book. Hi, Brandy. I could tell you guys about this. I could read you the summary, but these things haven't happened and I don't know if he's going to write about them. Oh well. My name is Kavoth. I've stolen princesses back from sleeping borrowed kings. I burned down a town of Trebon. I've spent the night with Felurian and left with both my sanity and my life. I was expelled from the university at a younger age than most people are allowed in. I tread paths by moonlight that others fear to speak of during the day. I have talked to gods, loved women, and written songs that make the minstrels weep. You may have heard of me. So begins a tale unequaled in fantasy literature, the story of a hero told in his own voice. It is a tale of sorrow, a tale of survival, a tale of one man's search for the meaning of his universe and how that search and the indomitable will that drove it gave birth to a legend. Hello, Smokeout. Hi, Bryce. Hope you're feeling better soon. Thanks, Bryce. So this is, I am sexist when it comes to my books. This is a male lead, male author. I hate when men write female characters. And is this a long story? It's super long. We are clocking 661 pages. Great book. Can't wait for the next one. He's taking a sweet time writing it, right, Survival? Like, I always say viral when it's survival. I always fuck it up. But yes, it's a nice long story. And my favorite part about the book is how it smells. I love the smell of books. My mom, when I was growing up, I would lose my sanity reading that many books. I read too much. My mom used to save up all of her money And then once every 3 months, she would go to a bookstore and she'd buy me all sorts of books, just trying to see what I liked and if I liked to read. And I didn't at first. I didn't start liking to read until I want to say 6th grade. Thank you for the follow. My first book that I really got into was the City of Ember. That was really interesting. I don't know if I have it or if it's at my mom's house, but that is a shorter book and that would be easy to read, I think, in one stream. I used to read a lot and now I'm lazy and listening to audiobooks. Last book I read was Edgar Allan Poe's Complete Works. Oh, there you go. Thank you for creeping. Everybody welcome. This is just something new for me. I'm not really in the mood to play games tonight. I'm just not feeling it. Your mom rocks. Thanks, Rick. Because we didn't have a lot. My mom took me and my brothers and divorced my biological father, and divorce was expensive. And we moved out to California. We didn't know anyone. And that was just one of the things she did for me. Can I get a ban on Twitch, please? Under user Beanwhip. Thank you. And I love. Last book I read was Bram Stoker's Dracula. 10 out of 10 would recommend. Oh, there you go. Stoker's. Read that wrong. Have you read The Wizard's First Rule? No, I haven't, Robert. No, I haven't. So instead of calling this book 1 and book 2, it is read as day 1 and day 2. To my mother, who taught me to love books, we have something in common, Patrick Rothfuss, who opened the door to Narnia, Pern, and Middle-earth, and to my father, who taught me that if I was going to do something, I should take my time and do it right the first time. You know what my mom taught me? My mom taught me that if you're going to get something you really want, make sure you get enough for each hand. And here we have our glorious maps. Kind of get to know the world a bit. Commonwealth. Yep. And then wish me luck on pronouncing. So many words in so many places. So the beginning is very heavy in descriptions, but it does loosen up a bit. Ow, fuck, I can't lift my leg. I have to lift my leg. Okay. Whew, whew, ow. Okay. Hi, Fury. I'm nervous. It was night again. The Waystone Inn lay in silence, and it was a silence of 3 parts. The most obvious part was a hollow, echoing quiet made by things that were lacking. If there had been a wind, it would have sighed through the trees, set in the inn's sign creaking on its hooks, and brushed the silence down the road like a trailing autumn of leaves. If there had been a crowd, even a handful of men inside the inn, they would have filled the silence with conversation and laughter, the clatter and clamor one expects from a drinking house during dark hours of the night. If there had been music, but no, of course there was no music. In fact, there were none of these things, and so the silence remained. Inside the Waystone, a pair of men huddled in a corner of the bar. They drank with quiet determination, avoiding serious discussions of troubling news. In doing this, they added a small, sullen silence to the larger hollow one. It made an alloy of sorts, a counterpoint. You should find a more comfortable chair for this. Like, have someone pull the recliner. We don't own a recliner. And my camera doesn't stretch to the couch. Okay, I'm gonna get comfortable. Okay. The third silence was not an easy thing to notice. If you listened for an hour, you might begin to feel it in the wooden floor underfoot and in the rough, splintering barrels behind the bar. It was in the weight of the black stone hearth that held the heat of a long-dead fire. It was in the slow back and forth of a white linen cloth rubbing along the grain of a bar, and was in the hands of a man who stood there, polishing a stretch of mahogany that already gleamed in the lamplight. The man had true red hair, red as flame. His eyes were dark and distant, and he moved with a subtle certainty that comes from knowing many things. The waystone was his, just as the third silence was. This was appropriate, and it was the greatest silence of the three, wrapping the others in itself. It was deep and wide as autumn's ending. It was heavy as a great river smooth stone. It was patient. It was the patient cut-flower sound of a man who is waiting to die. Chapter 1. A Place for Demons. It was feeling night, and the usual crowd was gathered at the Waystone Inn. 5 wasn't much of a crowd, but 5 was as many as the Waystone ever saw these days, times being what they were. Old Cobb was filling his role as storyteller and advice dispensary. The men at the bar sipped their drinks and listened. In the back room, a young innkeeper stood out of sight behind the bar, smiling as he listened to the details of a familiar story. When he awoke, Tablerin the Great found himself locked in a high tower. I gotta get into this. Andrew, hi. When he awoke, Tablerin the Great found himself locked in a high tower. They take his sword and stripped him of his tools. Key, coin, and candle were all gone. But that weren't even the worst of it, you see. Cobb paused for effect. 'Cause the lamps on the wall, they were burning blue. Graham, Jake, and Shep nodded to themselves. The 3 friends had grown up together listening to Cobb's stories and ignoring his advice. Cobb peered closely to the newer, more attentive member of his small audience, the smith's apprentice. Do you know what that mean, boy? Everyone called the smith's apprentice boy, despite the fact that he was a hand taller than anyone there. Small towns being what they are, he would most likely remain boy until his beard filled out or he bloodied someone's nose over the matter. The boy gave a slow nod. The Chandrian. That's right, Cobb said approvingly. The Chandrian. Everyone knows blue fire is one of their signs. Now he was... But how do you find him? The boy interrupted. Why didn't they kill him when they had the chance? Hush now. You'll get the answers before the end, Jake said. Just let him tell it. No need for all that, Jake, Graham said. Boy's just curious. Drink your drink. I drank me drink already, Jake grumbled. Oh, okay, so he's talking like Gooners. I need another, but the innkeeper's still skinning rats in the back room. He raised his voice and knocked his empty mug hollowly on top of the mahogany bar. Hoy, we're thirsty men in here. The innkeeper appeared to have 5 bowls of stew and 2 warm, round loaves of bread. He pulled more beer for Jake, Shep, and Old Cobb, moving through the air of bustling efficiency. The story was set aside while the men tended their dinners. Old Cobb tucked away his bowl of stew with the predatory efficiency of a lifetime bachelor. The others were still blowing steam off their bowls when he finished the last of his loaf and returned to his story. Now, Tablerin needed to escape, but when he looked around, he saw his cell had no door, no windows. All around him was nothing but smooth hearthstone It was a cell that no man could ever escape. But Tabler knew the names of all things, and so all things were his to command, and he said to the stone, "Break!" And the stone broke. The wall tore like a piece of paper, and through a hole Tablerin could see the sky, breathe in the sweet spring air. He stepped over the edge, looked down, and without a second thought, he stepped out into the open air. The boy's eyes went wide. He didn't. Cobb nodded seriously. So Tablerin fell, but he did not despair, for he knew the name of the wind, and so the wind obeyed him. He spoke to the wind, and it cradled and caressed him, bore him to the ground as gently as a puff on a thistledown, and sent him to his feet softly as a mother's kiss. And when he got to the ground, he felt his side, where they had just stabbed him. He saw that there weren't hardly a scratch. Now maybe it was just a piece of luck. Cobb tapped the sides of his nose knowingly. Or maybe it was something to do with the amulet he was wearing under his shirt. What amulet? The boy asked eagerly through a mouthful of stool. Old Cobb leaned back on his stool, glad for the chance to elaborate. A few days earlier, Tablerin had met a tinkerer on the road. And even though Tablerin didn't have much to eat, he shared his dinner with the old man. Right, sensible thing to do, Graham said quietly to the boy. Everyone knows a tinkerer pays for kindnesses twice. No, Jake grumbled. Get it right. A tinkerer's advice pays kindness twice. The innkeeper spoke up for the first time that night. Actually, you're missing more than half the truth, he said, standing in the doorway behind the bar. A tinkerer's debt is always paid, once for any simple trade, twice for freely given aid, thrice for any insult made. The men at the bar seemed almost surprised to see Coates standing there. They'd been coming to the Waystone every filling night for months, and Coa had yet to interject anything of his own before. Not that you could expect anything else, really. He'd only been in town for a year or so, and he was still a stranger. The smith's apprentice had lived here since he was 11, and he was still referred to as that Ranish boy, as if Ranish were some foreign country and not a town less than 30 miles away. I feel like I'm going to miss a lot of this story. I'm not consistent with anything in my life, like, at all. Robert. Just something I heard once, Co said as he filled the silence, obviously embarrassed. Old Cobb nodded before he cleared his throat and launched back into the story. Now this amulet was worth a whole bucket of gold royals, but on account of Tablerin's kindness, the tinkerer sold it to him for nothing more than an iron penny, a copper penny, and a silver penny. It was black as a winter's night and cold to the touch, but so long as it was around his neck, Tablerin would be safe from the harm of all evil things, demons and such. I give a good piece for such a thing these days, Shep said darkly. He had drunk the most and talked the least over the course of the evening. Everyone knew that something bad had happened out at the farm last candling night, but since they were good friends, they knew better than to press him for details. At least not this early in the evening, not as sober as they were. Aye, who wouldn't, Old Cobb said judiciously, talking along a drink. I didn't know the Chandrian were demons, the boy said. I had heard. They ain't demons, Jing said firmly. They were the first 6 people to refuse Telu's choice of the path, and he cursed them to wander the corners. Are you telling the story, Jacob Walker? Cobb said sharply. 'Cause if you are, I'll just let you get along with it. The 2 men glared at each other for a long moment. Eventually, Jake looked away, muttering something that could conceivably have been an apology. Cobb turned back to the boy. That's the mystery of the Chandrian, he explained. Where do they come from? Where do they go when they've done their bloody deeds? Are they men who sold their souls? Demons? Spirits? Who knows? Cobb shot Jake a profoundly disdainful look, though every half-wit claims he knows. The story fell further into bickering at this point about the nature of the Chandrian, the signs that show their presence to the weary, and whether the amulet could protect Tablerin from bandits or mad dogs or falling off a horse. Things were getting heated when the front door banged open. Jake looked over. It's about time you got in, Carter. Tell the damn fool the difference between a demon and a dog. Every kid... Jake stopped mid-sentence and rushed to the door. God's body, what happened to you? Carter stepped into the light, his face pale and smeared with blood. He clutched an old saddle blanket to his chest. It was an odd, awkward shape, as if it had been wrapped around a tangle of kindling sticks. Just a sec, there's a 10-year-old I need to block. His friends jumped off their stools and hurried over at the sight of him. I'm fine, he said as he made his way slowly to the common room. His eyes were wild around the edges, like a skittish horse. I'm fine. He dropped the bundled blanket onto the nearest table where it knocked hard against the wood, as if it were full of stones. His clothes were crisscrossed with long, strange cuts. His gray shirt hung in loose tatters except for where it stuck to his body, stained a dark, sullen red. Graham tried to ease him into a chair. Mother of God, sit down, Carter. What happened to you? Sit down. Carter shook his head stubbornly. I told you, I'm fine. I'm not hurt that bad. How many were there? Graham said. 1, Carter said. But it's not what you think. God damn it, I told you, Carter, old Cobb burst out with the sort of frightened anger that only relatives and close friends can muster. I told you for months now you can't go out alone. Not even as far as Bend. It ain't safe. Jake laid a hand on the old man's arm, quieting him. Just take a seat, Graham said, still trying to steer Carter into a chair. Let's get that shirt off you and get you cleaned up. Carter shook his head. I'm fine. I got it cut up a little, but the blood is mostly Nellie's. It jumped on her, killed her about 2 miles outside of town past the old stone bridge. A moment of serious silence followed the news. The smith's apprentice laid a sympathetic hand on Carter's shoulder. Damn, that's hard. She was gentle as a lamb. Never tried to bite or kick when you brought her in for shoes. Best horse in town. Damn, He trailed off. Damn, I don't know what to say. He looked around helplessly. Cap finally managed to free himself of Jake. I told you, he said repeatedly, shaking a finger in Carter's direction. There's folks out lately that would kill for a pair of pennies, let alone a horse and a cart. What are you going to do now? Pull it out yourself? Hey! Wait, what's happening here? Love? Oh, hi, Tommy. I am reading. I went to hospital today, and they injected my leg with things, and I can't pick it up without it hurting, and I fidget when I'm streaming. So I thought I'd read a book, because I can't fall asleep, and I don't want to be alone. And I struggle reading out loud. I do, but I'm trying my best. Now, where was I before I saw Tommy and got happy? Oh, let's see. Pull it out yourself. There we go. That's what she said. There was a moment of uncomfortable quiet. Jake and Cobb glared at each other while the rest seemed at loss for words, unsure how to comfort their friend. The innkeeper moved carefully through the silence. Arms full, he stepped nimbly around Shep and began to arrange some items nearby the table. A bowl of hot water, shears, some clean linen, a few glass bottles, needles, and gut. Aw, thanks, Tommy. This never would have happened if he'd listened to me in the first place, old Cobb muttered. 4 a.m. here and I'm bloody full of whiskey. You would be. Did you find anyone to lose some money at blackjack for you, Tommy? Jake tried to quiet him, but Cobb brushed the younger man aside. I'm just telling the truth. It's a damn shame about Nellie, but he better listen now or he'll end up dead. You don't get lucky twice with those sort of men. Carter's mouth made a thin line. He reached out and pulled the edge of the bloody blanket. Whatever was inside flipped over once and snagged on the cloth. Carter tugged harder, and there was a clatter, a bank of flat rock stones upended onto the tabletop. It was a spider as large as a wagon wheel, black as slate. Oh man, don't think I've forgotten about that guy. It's a blood. So essentially what this guy pulls out of his blanketed saddle is a spider, probably up to here. So probably about a 4.5 foot spider. That's a thing of nightmares. Like, no, thank you. I'm good. Don't want today. The smith's apprentice jumped backward and hit the table, knocking it over and almost falling to the ground himself. Cobb's face went slack. Graham, Shep, Jake made wordless, startled sounds and moved away, raising their hands and their faces. Same. Carter took a step backward and was almost a nervous twitch. Silence filled the room like a cold sweat. The innkeeper frowned. They can't have made it this far west yet, he said softly. If not for the silence, it's unlikely anyone would have heard him. But they did, and their eyes pulled away from the thing to the table to stare mutely at the red-haired man. Jake found his voice first. You know what that is? The innkeeper's eyes were distant. A scrael, he said distractedly. I thought the mountains. Scrael? Jake broke in. Black and bloody of God coat. You've seen these things before? Yeah, like killing spiders scare me. Why is your... Oh, why is it only painted? I don't know. I'm missing my thumb on this side for some reason as well. This finger is the only one painted, so I know where I'm reading. It's like... Ha! Tommy. What? The red-haired innkeeper looked up sharply, as if suddenly remembering where he was. Oh, no, of course not. Seeing that he was just the only one within the arm's reach of the dark thing, he took a measured step away. Just something I had heard. They stared at him. Do you remember the trader that came through here 2 span ago? They all nodded. Bastard tried to charge me 10 pennies for half a pound of salt, Cobb said reflectively, repeating the complaint for perhaps the 100th time. Legit thought that was the reason. Nah, I just probably forgot to paint the rest. Wish I'd bought some, Jake mumbled. Graham nodded, a silent agreement. He was a filthy shim. Oh, I haven't heard that insult in a while. Tell me you're a filthy shim. Cobb spat, seeming to find comfort in the familiar words. I might pay two in a tight time, but 10 is robbery. Not if there are more of those on the road, Shep said darkly. All eyes went back to the thing on the table. He told me he'd heard of them over in Melcombe, Coat said quickly, watching everybody's faces as they studied the thing on the table. I thought he was just trying to drive up his prices. What else he'd say? Carter asked. Innkeeper looked thoughtfully for a moment and then shrugged. I didn't get the whole story. He was only in town a couple hours. I don't like spiders, the smith's apprentice said. He remained on the other side of the table, some 15 feet away. Cover it up. It's not a spider, Jake said. It's got no eyes. Oh, a spider with no eyes that can find you and hunt you? No, thank you. Oh, we got a new sparkler. Thank you. Welcome. Thank you for subbing. It's got no mouth either. How does it eat? How does it eat? Shep said darkly. What does it eat? The innkeeper continued to eye the thing curiously. He leaned closer, stretching out a hand. Everyone edged even farther away from the table. Careful, Carter said. Its feet are like sharp knives. More like razors, Coat said. And his fingertip brushed the sack girl's black, featureless body. Its black, featureless body is smooth and hard like pottery. Don't go messing with it. He's poking. He's touching it. Switching to Twitch because the speed is messing up. Oh, Facebook's screwing up, eh? He's touching the dead spider thing that has no mouth and no eyes. Like, what? No, just burn it with fire. Like, I just kill it with fire, all right? Just no, thank you. Moving carefully, the innkeeper took one of the long, smooth legs and tried to break it with both hands like a stick. Not pottery, he amended. He set it against the edge of the table and leaned his weight against it. It broke with a sharp crack, more like stone. How did it get all these cracks? He pointed to the thin, featureless, gray, smooth, black surface of the body. Oh, by the way, okay, so because we have a new subscriber, you get a Christmas ornament. This one's yours. You weren't an elephant, and that will go on my tree after the stream. Moon. Sorry, yeah, my Facebook chat is getting weird, so I came here. Ornament! Okay, fine, I'll do it now because Tommy's excited and drinking. Let's go put you on the tree next to the giraffe. Oh. Oh, fuck. That hurts. Oh, balls. Okay. Oh. Oh my gosh. It feels like I hit my funny bone in my hip. Oh, this is Robert, by the way. Oh, Robert, got you. Our next ornament on the tree is this top hat. Okay. How did I get all these cracks? Nellie fell on it, Carter said. It jumped out of the tree and started to climb all over her, cutting her up with its feet. It moved so fast. I didn't even know what was going on. Carter finally sank into the chair at Graham's urging. She got tangled in her harness and fell on it and broke some of its legs. Then it came after me. Got on me, crawled all over me. He crossed his arms in front of his bloody chest and shuddered. I managed to get it off me and stomped it as hard as I could. Then it got on me again. Country roads, hi Allie, take me home to the place. But there's all two angry gamers. Tommy, hats off to you, buddy. You just wanted to watch me hobble, didn't you? Well. The top hat goes up on top. What'd I do for an ornament? Balls. Our next ornament is this martini mouse. Actually, this is probably Tommy's spirit animal. Always in trouble. So it's just floating in a nice martini wrapped in lights. Good thing there's no liquid in it, or this thing would fry itself. How about next time I stream, I use my laptop to do this, and that way I can, like, do this from bed. Then it got on me again. He trailed off his face ashen. The innkeeper nodded to himself as he continued to prod the thing. There's no blood, no organs. It's just gray inside. He poked it with a finger, like a mushroom. Incepios! Ducky! Ducky has resubbed. Ducky. Oh, okay. Fallen Shelter has resubbed too. Okay. So, Fallen Shelter, you are a pipe mouse. Yep. So, smoke Christmas dank every day. Allie Daddy is a sparkler. Man. Okay. Allie Daddy. Okay, we've got, okay, welcome another sparkler. Okay, so Allie Daddy is a nutcracker. Oh my gosh, what the heck? Okay. Big Die is a boner. And then our other one is a leaf. Azrael, everybody's resubbing. You guys just want me to all hobble to the tree. Thank you so much, everyone. Oh my gosh. Azraelin is Christmas mice. Oh my gosh. Okay, Rar too. Rar. My go. Looks like the tree is getting done. Rar is a Tweety Bird. What the heck? Okay. Oh, lost loose sanity and Coden. Okay, so someone is Snoopy. And then let's see another good one. I might have to go buy some like fun, inappropriate Christmas ornaments. Ah, I know. You will be this glass embroidered ornament. Fun. All right. Let's get you all in my balls, I guess. Holy smokes, who would have thought this would have come from reading a book? You have pretty eyes. Oh, thank you too. They're hazel, so they're green and brown. Alright, if anybody subs while I'm gone, you let me know when I get back. Okay. Oh. Okay. No. It's in the way. Country road, take me home to the place I belong. West Virginia, mountain mama. Take me home, country road, take me home to the place I belong, West Virginia. Oh. Thanks for the tier 1 sub, Anonymous. Oh, thank you so much. So I missed one. Maybe you can do a singing stream sometime because that was awesome. Okay. Oh. So did someone sub while I was gone? If not, I'll keep reading. Wait, what? when? Singing stream is on the cards when? I don't know. I didn't see this. Someone just said in the chat. If you guys want a singing stream, we can do karaoke. And Tommy, we can use Skype, and we can oh, shut up, Nightbot. We should do karaoke. Yes. Grand time. Nope, all the same subs. Okay, cool. Alright, thanks dudes for being awesome. And dudettes. There's no blood, no organs, it's just gray inside. He poked it with a finger like a mushroom. Great, Talu, leave it alone, the smith's apprentice begged. Sometimes spiders twitch after you kill them, so he's real scared of spiders. Listen to yourselves, Cobb said scathingly. Spiders don't get as big as pigs. You know what it is. He looked around, making eye contact with each and every one of them. It's a demon. I forgot the bookstore again. Love you guys. You're awesome. They looked at the broken thing. Oh, come on now, Jake said, disagreeing mostly out of habit. It's not like he made an inarticulate gesture. I can't. How many ornaments are you giving away? I'm not giving away ornaments. Putting them on the tree. And I've got a box full. Everyone knew what he was thinking. Certainly there were demons in the world, but they were like Telu's angels. They were like heroes and kings. They belonged in stories. They belonged out there. Tabler and the Great called up a fire and lightning to destroy demons. Telu broke them in his hands and sent them howling into the nameless void. Your childhood friend didn't stomp one to death on the road to Baden Bright. It was ridiculous. Coat ran his hand through his red hair, then broke the silence. There's one way to tell for sure, he said, pinching in his pocket. Iron or fire. He brought out a bulging leather purse. And in the name of God, Graham pointed out, demons fear 3 things. Cold iron, clean fire, and the holy name of God. The innkeeper's mouth pressed itself into a straight line, and it was not quite a frown. Of course, he said as he emptied the purse onto the table, fingering through the jumbled coins. Heavy silver talents and thin silver talent bits, copper joints, broken halfpennies, and iron drabs. Does anyone have a shim? Just use a drab, Jake said. That's good iron. I don't want to use good iron, the innkeeper said. A drab has too much carbon in it. It's almost steel. He's right, the smith apprentice said. Except it's not carbon. You use coke to make steel. Coke and lime. That sounds kind of delicious. The innkeeper nodded deferentially to the boy. You know best, young master. It's your business after all. His long fingers finally found a shim in a pile of coins and he held it up. Here we are.
My anger onto you.
2 Angry Gamers has just donated $10. Thank you. I mean, if you're gonna give me money, I'm gonna give you ornaments. You want 2 Angry Gamers. Okay, Tommy. Psh. Lame ass Christmas stocking. Fuck this, I'm Rumble. Let's get ready to rumble. Go ahead and stick this over here. Yeah, there you go. Happy Tommy. You know, Tommy, Nightbot is being a twat. Let me fix this. I don't like that Nightbot's being a twat. Can you say something in the chat again? Tell me I'm gonna fix this. Type whatever strikes your fancy. Boop. Done. Now you'll never have problems with Nightbutt again. His long fingers found his shim in a pile of coins and he held it up. Here we are. What'll it do? Iron kills demons, Cobb's voice was uncertain. But this one's already dead. It may not do anything. One way to find out. The innkeeper met each of their eyes briefly as if measuring them. Then he turned purposefully back to the table and they were edged farther away. To what? Not to what? You put an R in there. You put an R in there, Tommy. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk. You're welcome. Coat pressed the iron shim to the backside of the creature, and there was a short, sharp crackling sound like a pine log snapping in a hot fire. Everyone startled and relaxed when the big black thing remained motionless. Cobb and the others exchanged shaky smiles, like boys spooked by any ghost story. Their smiles went sour as the room filled with the sweet, acrid smell of rotting flowers and burning hair. The innkeeper pressed the shim onto the table and there was a sharp click. Well, he said, brushing his hands against his apron, guess that settles that. What do we do now? Oh my gosh. Big die, you bloody potato. I love your face. Welcome, everybody. Hours later, the innkeeper stood in the doorway of the waystone and let his eyes relax to the darkness. Footprints of a lamplight in the inn's windows fell across the dirt road and the doors of the smithy across the way. It was not a large road, nor was it well traveled. It didn't seem to lead anywhere, as some roads do. The innkeeper drew a deep breath of autumn air and looked around restlessly, as if waiting for something to happen. He called himself Coat. He had chosen his name carefully when he came to this place. He had taken a new name for most of the usual reasons, and a few unusual ones as well. Not the least of which was the fact that names were important to him. Looking up, he saw 1,000 stars glistening in the deep velvet night with no moon. This is a reading stream? Why, yes it is. I had some medical procedures today and my hip is in pain. I can't pick up my leg. So instead gaming, reading. Oh, you guys can't see my book. Just my stupid tree, which will decorate as we get more subscribers. Looking up, he saw 1,000 stars glittering in the deep velvet of a night with no moon. He knew them all, their stories, their names. He knew them in a familiar way, the way he knew his own hands. Looking down, Coat sighed without knowing it and went back inside. He locked the door and shuttered the wide windows of the inn, as if to distance himself from those stars and all the very names. He swept the floor methodically, catching all the corners. He washed the tables of the bar, moving with patient efficiency. At the end of an hour's work, the water in his bucket was still clean enough for a lady to wash her hands in. Finally, he pulled a stool behind the bar and began to polish a vast array of bottles nestled between two huge barrels. He wasn't nearly as crisp and efficient, but this chore... Gosh. I figured out how to host you on my channel, but well, thank you for the host. Thank you, Craig. It soon became obvious the polishing was only an excuse to touch and to hold things. He even hummed a little, although he didn't realize it, and would have stopped himself had he known. As he turned the bottles in his long, graceful hands, the similar emotion eased a few tired lines in his face, making him seem younger, certainly not yet 30. Not even near 30. Young for an innkeeper, young for a man with so many tired lines remaining on his face. Coat came to a stop at... I need water. I'm getting nervous. Stage right. Fine when I'm gaming, but reading aloud is different. I stumble. And when I get frazzled, I stutter. Truth. Coat came to the top of the stairs and opened his door. His room was austere, almost monkish. There was a black stone fireplace in the center of the room, a pair of chairs, and a small desk. The only other furniture was a narrow bed with a large, dark chest at its foot. Frazzles are great crisps. I've never heard of a frazzle. Nothing decorated the walls, nor covered the wooden floor. There were footsteps in the hall. A young man stepped into the room carrying a bowl of stew and steamed and smelled the pepper. He was dark and charming, with a quick smile and cunning eyes. "You haven't been this late in weeks," he said as he handed over the bowl. "There must have been good stories tonight, Rushy." Right. Rushy was another one of the innkeeper's nicknames. Rushy was another one of the innkeeper's names. A nickname almost. The sound of it tugged the corner of his mouth into a wry smile as he sank into the deep chair in front of the fire. "So what did you learn today, Bast?" "Today, master, I learned why great lovers have better eyesight than great scholars." "And why is that, Bast?" Coat asked, amusement touching the edges of his eyes. Bast closed the door and returned to sit to the second chair, turning it to face his teacher on the fire. He moved with strange delicacy and grace, as if he were dancing. "Well, Rushy, all the rich books are found inside where the lighting's bad, but lovely girls tend to be out in the sunshine and therefore much easier to study without risking injury to one's eyes." Coat nodded. "Oh, yeah. Tommy is sending me a link. He's telling me to buy chips. Frazzles, crispy bacon. Oh, that sounds horrid, Tommy." This is... Do I even have screen capture on? Let me show you guys what he just sent me. Frazzles. Yes. Tommy. Oh my gosh. Get them a 10 back. Ooh. Coat nodded, but an exceptionally clever student could also take a book outside, thus bettering himself without fear of lessening his much-loved faculty of sight. "10 pence a pack, I said." Oh, got you. It's cheap. I thought the same thing, Rushy. Being, of course, an exceptionally clever student. Of course. But when I found a place in the sun where I could read, a beautiful girl came along and kept me from doing anything of the sort. Bast finished with a flourish. Coat sighed. "Am I correct in assuming you didn't manage to read any of the Salum Tinature today?" "Yeah, read that fucking book, Sky. You tell me what to do, Tommy. I will come to England and I will... I don't know what I'll do. Hit you with a ton of bricks, dismember you slowly, leave you rotting in a dumpster somewhere. Feed you to one of the demons in this book. The spider demon, without eyes and a mouth. Love you." Bast managed to look somewhat ashamed. Looking into the fire, Coat tried to assume a stern face and failed. "Ah, Bast, I hope she was lovely as a warm wind in the shade. I'm a bad teacher to say it, but I'm glad. I don't feel up to a long bout of lessons right now." There was a moment of silence. Carter was attacked by a grayling tonight. Hello, Red Ranger. Bass' easy smile fell away into a crackled mask, leaving his face stricken and pale. A Skrael. He came halfway to his feet, as if he would bolt into the room, then gave an embarrassing frown and forced himself back into the chair. How do you know who found his body? He's still alive, Bass. He brought it back. There was only one. There's no such thing as only one Skraeling. You know that. I know, Coat said. The fact remains that there was only one. And he killed it, Bass said. It couldn't have been a Skraeling. Maybe... Bast, it was one of the Skrael. I saw it. Coat gave him a serious look. He was lucky, that's all. Even so, he's badly hurt. 48 stitches. He used nearly up all my gut. Coat picked up a bowl of stool. If anyone asks, tell them my grandfather was a caravan guard who taught me how to clean and stitch a wound. They were too shocked to ask anything about it tonight, but tomorrow some of them might get curious, and I don't want that. He blew into his bowl, raising a cloud of steam to his face. What did you do to the body? I didn't do anything with it, Coat said pointedly. I am just an innkeeper. This sort of thing is quite beyond me. Rushy, you can't just let them muddle through this on their own, Coat sighed. They took it to the priest. He did all the right things for all the wrong reasons. Bast opened his mouth, but Coat continued before he could say anything. Yes, I made sure the pit was deep enough. Yes, I made sure the rowan wood was in the fire. And yes, I made sure it burned long and hot enough before they buried it. And yes, I made sure that no one kept a piece of it as a souvenir. He scowled, his eyebrows drawing together. I'm not an idiot, you know. Bass visibly relaxed, settling back into his chair. I know you're not, Rushy, but I wouldn't trust half these people to piss leeward without help. He looked thoughtful for a moment. I can't imagine why there was only one. Maybe they died coming over the mountains, Coat suggested. All but this one. It's impossible, Bass admitted reluctantly. It's possible, Bass admitted reluctantly. Maybe it was that storm from a couple days back, Coat pointed out. A real wagon tipper, as we used to say back in the trope. All the wind and rain might have scattered one loose from the pack. I like your first idea better, Rushy, Bass said uncomfortably. 3 or 4 Skrael would go through this town like a hot knife through butter? More like several hot knives through several for a dozen farmers, Bass said dryly. These people can't defend themselves. I bet there aren't 6 swords in this whole town. Not that swords would do much good against the Skrael. There was a long moment of thoughtful silence. After a moment, Bass began to fidget. Any news? Coat shook his head. They didn't get into the news tonight. Carter disrupted things while they were still telling stories. That's something, I suppose. They'll be back at it tomorrow night. It'll give me something to do. Coat poked a spoon idly into the stew. I should have bought that Skrael from Carter, he mused. He could have used the money for a new horse. People would have come all over to see it, and we would have had some more business for a change. Bass gave him a speechless, horrified look. Coat made a pacifying gesture with a hand that held a spoon. I'm joking, Bass, he gave a weak smile. Still, would have been nice. No, Rushy, it most certainly would not have been nice, Bass said emphatically. People would have come from all over to see it, he repeated derisively. Indeed. The business would have been nice, Coat clarified. Busyness would have been nice. He jabbed the spoon into the stew again. Anything would have been nice. They sat for a long moment. Coat was scowling down into the bowl of stew in his hands, his eyes far away. It must have been awful for you here, Bass. It must be awful for you here, Bass, he said. You must be numb with boredom. Bass shrugged. There are a few young wives in town, a scattering of daughters. He grinned like a child. I tend to make my own fun. That's good, Bass. There was another silence. Coat took another spoonful, chewed, swallowed. They thought it was a demon, you know. Bass shrugged. Might as well be, Rushy. It's probably the best thing for them to think. Nice. Hello, Glad. I know I encouraged them, in fact. But you know what that means. He met Bass Eyes. The blacksmith's gonna be doing brisk business in a couple days. Bass' expression went carefully blank. Ooh. Coat nodded. I won't blame you if you want to leave, Bass. You have better places to be than this. Bass' expression was shocked. I couldn't leave, Freshie. He opened up and closed his mouth a few times, at loss for words. Who else would teach me? Coat grinned, and for a moment his face showed truly how young he was. Behind the weary lines and placid innkeeper's expression, he looked no older than his dark-haired companion. Who indeed? AFK. Here, gotta go take a few care of your special needs, kitty. Okay, I'll be here reading. Who indeed? He gestured toward the door with his spoon. Go do your reading then, or bother someone's daughter. I'm sure you have better things to do than watch me. Actually, be gone, demon, Ko said, switching to a thickly accented Temic through a mouthful of stool. Bass burst into laughter and made an obscene gesture with one hand. It's probably that. I like taking care of special kitties. Ooh. Coat swallowed and changed languages. Arroy te dana, Lena. Oh, come now, Bast reproached, his smile fading away. That's just insulting. By earth and stone, I abjure you. Coat dipped his fingers into the cup next to his sides, flicked droplets in Bast's directions. Glamour be banished. With cider? Bast managed to look amused and annoyed at the same time. He had dubbed a bead of liquid from the front of his shirt. This better not stain. Coat took another bite of his dinner. Go soak it. If the situation becomes desperate, I recommend you avail yourself of the numerous solvent formulae extant in the Selim tincture. Chapter 13, I believe. Fine. Baston walked to the door, stepping with a strange, casual grace. Call if you need anything. He closed the door behind himself. Ko ate slowly, mopping up the last of his stew with a piece of bread. He looked out the window as he ate, or tried to, as the lamplight turned its surface mirror-like against the dark behind it. His eyes wandered to the room restlessly. I like your shirt. Oh, thanks. This is actually my merch. So, balls, 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 because everybody has red balls, blue balls, and sparkly balls. This is awesomely obscene. I love this book. Like, if you guys, I know outside the colonies of balls considered a offensive term for male genitals. If you guys think I'm butchering it by reading out loud, I recommend you buy it yourself. It is a fantastic book. There's a second one. This one's better. And we'll be waiting until I'm dead for the third. How many pages in total? I think 662. Yeah, 662. Knew that off the top of the cranium. Nope, you'll have to record it for me so I can have it on book tape. As a book on tape. Bull. Are you married? 162. Yes, Tommy. For fuck's sake. Right, well, crack on. I know, right? This is only part 1 of the stream. I have a significant other. I think he's streaming right now, actually. His eyes wandered the room restlessly. The fireplace was made of the same black rock as the one downstairs. It stood in the center of the room, a minor feat of engineering which Quoth was rather proud of. The bed was small, little more than a cot. and if you were to touch it, you would find the mattress almost non-existent. Turn to Mr. Jones. Thank you for the host. Thank you, thank you. A skilled observer might notice that there was something his gaze avoided. The same way you'd avoid meeting the eye of an old lover at a formal dinner, or of an old enemy sitting across the room in a crowded alehouse late at night. Coat tried to relax, failed, fidgeted, sighed, shifted in his seat, and without willing it, his eyes fell on the chest at the foot of his bed. You want some balls? Boy, I dish up balls for dinner. You better eat all of them. My best friend reads to me on FaceTime. Oh, really? So relaxing. I'm glad. It was made of roe, a red heavy wood, dark as coal and smooth as polished glass. Prized by perfumers and alchemists, a piece the size of your thumb was easily worth gold. To have a chest made of it went far beyond extravagance. The chest was sealed 3 times. It had a lock of iron, a lock of copper, and a lock that could not be seen. I'm going to murder someone if they do not turn off their little beeping vehicle. ASMR. Do you really want ASMR? Because I can do this here. I'm such an asshole. Welcome to An Asshole Reads You a Book. I'm sorry. I'm not actually sorry. I'm not. I'm blushing. You guys are making me blush. Let's see, where was I? Yeah. When Coat's eyes fell on the chest, they did not dart away quickly. They did not slide away slyly to the side as if they were pretending it wasn't there. But in a moment of looking, his face regained all of the lines, the simple pleasures of the day he slowly smoothed away. The comfort of his bottles and books was erased in a second, leaving nothing behind his eyes but emptiness and ache. For a moment, fierce longing and regret weared across his face. Then they were gone, replaced by the weary feature of an innkeeper, a man who called himself Coat. He sighed again, without knowing it, and pushed himself to his feet. It was a long time before he walked past that chest to the bed. Once to the bed, it was a long time before he began to sleep. As Coat has guessed, they had come back to the Waystone the next night for dinner and drinks. There were a few half-hearted attempts at stories, but they dried out quickly. No one was really in the mood. So it was still early in the evening when the discussion turned to matters of greater import. They chewed over rumors that had come into town, most of them troubling. The Pentient King was having a difficult time with the rebels in Revesque. They caused some concern, but only in the general way. Oh, I said the name wrong. Rusevek. I'm just going to call it whatever I want. I'm going to do it the dyslexic way and say Revesque. Why not? This caused some concern, but only in the general way. Revesque was a long way off. Even Cobb, the most worldly of them, would be hard-pressed to find it on a map. They discussed the war in their own terms. Cobb predicted the third levy tax after the harvests were in, and no one argued, though there hadn't been a three bleeder year in living memory. Jake guessed that the harvest would be good enough that the third levy wouldn't break most families, except the Bentleys, who were on hard times anyway, and the Rysons, whose sheep kept disappearing, and Crazy Martin, who had planted all his barley this year. Even the farmer with half a brain had planted beans. Every farmer with half a brain had planted beans. That was one good thing about the fighting. The soldiers ate beans, and the prices would be high. I'm going to bed. Good night, Tommy. Sleep well. I love you. And he says he loves you, chat. Bye. If you guys are ever wondering who I'm talking to, oh, you guys can't see each other. There we go. So I stream on 4 different platforms. I'm on YouTube, Twitch, Mixer, and Facebook. So don't get too confused by life. Okay. After a few more drinks, deeper concerns were voiced. Deserter soldiers and other opportunities were thick on the roads, making even short trips risky. The roads were always bad, of course, in the same way winter was always cold. You complained, took sensible precautions, and got on with the business of living your life. Danessa's not here. Danessa's sleeping. It's already too late. It's never too late. But this was different. Over the last 2 months, the roads had become so bad that people had stopped complaining. The last caravan was 2 wagons and 4 guards. The merchant had been asking 10 pennies for half a pound of salt, 15 for a loaf of sugar. He didn't even have any pepper or cinnamon or chocolate. He did have 1 small sack of coffee, but he wanted 2 silver talents for that. At first, people laughed at his prices. Then, when he held firm, folk had spat and cursed him. Tell her she's not allowed to sleep. That had been nearly 2 span ago. 2 span is 22 days. There had not been another serious trader since, even though this was the season for it. So desperate, the third levy tax looming large on everybody's minds. People were looking to their purses and wishing they had bought a little something just in case the snow came early. No one spoke of the previous night, of the things that were burned and buried. Other folk were talking, of course, and the town was alive with gossip. Carter's wounds ensured that the stories would be taken half seriously, but not much more than half with the word demon being spoken, but it was with half smiles hidden and hands raised. Only the 6 friends had seen the thing before it was burned. One of them had been wounded, and the others had been drinking. The priest had seen it too, but it was his job to see demons. Demons were good for business. The innkeeper had seen it too, apparently, but he wasn't from around here. He couldn't know the truth that was so apparent to everyone born and raised in this little town. Stories were told here, but they happened everywhere. They happened somewhere else. This was not the place for demons. Besides, things were bad enough without borrowing trouble. Cobb and the rest knew that there was no sense talking about it. Trying to convince folk would only make them the laughingstock, like Crazy Martin, who had been trying to dig a well inside of his own home for years now. Still, each one of them had bought a piece of cold wrought iron from the smith, heavy as they could swing, and none of them said what they were thinking. Instead, they complained about the roads being bad and getting worse. They talked about merchants having deserters, levies, not enough salt to last the winter. They reminisced 3 years ago when even the thought of locking their doors at night would have been laughable. The conversation took a downward turn from there. Even though none of them said what they were thinking, the evening ended with a grim note. Most evenings did these days, times being what they were. A Beautiful Day, Chapter 2. Foxy, you hear Mommy reading? Come here. Want to say hi to the internet? Come on. Bee. She loves being read too. This is my dog Foxy, if you haven't met her. Yeah. Hear Mommy reading? Yeah. Hear me reading. Okay. Oh, thank you for the follow, Relax Panda. Getting comfy? Okay. I'll get back to reading, okay? She just want me to read. I'll have to do this. It was one of those most perfect autumn days, so common in stories and so real in the world. The weather was warm and dry, ideal for ripening a field of wheat or corn. On both sides of the road, the trees were changing colors. Tall poplars had gone a buttery yellow, while the shrubbery sumac encroached on the road was tinged a violent red. Only the old oaks seemed to be reluctant to give up the summer, and the leaves remained on the evening mingling with gold and green. Everything said, "You couldn't hope for a nicer day to have a half-dozen ex-soldiers with hunting boats relieve you of everything you owned." "She's not much of a horse, sir," the chronicler said. "One small step above a dray, and when the rain comes, The man cut him off with a sharp gesture. "Listen, friend. The king's army is paying good money for anything with 4 legs and at least 1 eye. If you were stark mad and riding a hobby horse down the road, I'd just simply take it off you." Their leader had an air of command around him. The chronicler guessed that he had been a low trafficking officer not long ago. "Just hop down," he said seriously. "We'll get this done with you and you can be on your way." The chronicler climbed down from his horse. He had been robbed before and knew when there was nothing to be gained by discussion. These fellows knew their business. No energy wasted on bravado or idle threats. One of them looked over the horse, checking the hooves, the teeth, the harness. 2 others went through the saddlebags with military efficiency, laying all his worldly possessions on the ground: 2 blankets, a hooded cloak, a flat leather satchel, and his heavy, well-stocked travel sack. "Bye, Foxy." Yeah, she's like, "I'm good. Bye, Mom." "That's all of it, Commander," one of the men said, "except for about 20 pounds of oats." The commander knelt down and opened the flat leather satchel, peering inside. "There's nothing but paper and pens in there," the chronicler said. The commander turned to look backward over his shoulder. "You a scribe, then?" The chronicler nodded. "It's my livelihood, sir. No real use to you." The man looked through the satchel, found it to be true, and set it aside. He then upended the travel sack onto the chronicler's spread cloak and poked through the contents. He took most of the chronicler's salt and a pair of bootlaces. Then, much to the scribe's dismay, he picked up the shirt the chronicler had bought back in Linwood. It was a fine linen dyed deep red and royal blue. Too nice for traveling. The chronicler hadn't even had a chance to wear it yet. He sighed. The commander left everything else laying on the cloak and got to his feet, and the others took turns going through the chronicler's things. The commander spoke up. "You only have 1 blanket, don't you, Janice?" One of the men nodded. "Take one of his, then. You'll need a second before winter's through." "His cloak is in better shape than mine, sir." "Take it, but leave yours. The same for you, Whitkins. Leave your old tinder box if you're taking his." "I lost mine, sir," Whitkins said. "Else I would." The whole process was surprisingly civilized. The chronicler lost all of his needles but one, both extra pairs of socks, a bundle of dried fruit, a loaf of sugar, half a bottle of alcohol, and a pair of ivory dice. They left him the rest of his clothes, his dried meat, and a half-eaten loaf of incredibly stale rye bread. His flat leather satchel remained untouched. While the men repacked his travel sack, the commander turned to the Chronicle. "Let's have the purse, then." The chronicler handed it over. "And the ring." "There's hardly any silver in it," the chronicler mumbled as he unscrewed it from his fingers. "What's around your neck?" The chronicler unbuttoned his shirt, revealing a dull ring of metal hanging from a leather cord. "Just iron, sir." The commander came close and rubbed it between his fingers before letting it fall against the chronicler's chest. "Keep, then. I'm not one to come between a man and his religion," he said as he emptied the purse into one hand, making a pleasant, surprised noise as he prodded through the coins with his fingers. "Scribing pays better than I thought," he said as he began to count the shares to his men. "I don't suppose you could spare a penny or two out of that?" the chronicler asked. "Just enough for a couple hot meals?" The 6 men turned to the Chronicle as if they hadn't quite believed what they heard. The commander laughed. "God's body, you certainly have a pair, don't you?" There was a grudging respect in his voice. "You seem a reasonable fellow," the chronicler said with a shrug. "And a man's gotta eat." The leader smiled for the first time. A sentiment I can agree with. He took 2 pennies and brandished them before putting them back into the chronicler's purse. "Here's a pair for your pair, then." He tossed the chronicler the purse and stuffed the beautiful royal blue shirt into his saddlebag. "Thank you, sir," the chronicler said. "You might want to know that bottle one of your men took is wood alcohol used for cleaning my pens. It'll go badly if he drinks it." The commander smiled and nodded. "You see what comes from treating people well," he said to his men as he pulled himself onto the horse. "It's been a pleasure, Sir Scribe. If you get on your way now, you can still make Abbott's Ford by dark." When Chronicler could no longer hear the hoofbeats in the distance, he repacked his travel sack, making sure everything was well stowed, and he tugged off one of his boots, stripping out the lining and removed a tightly wrapped bundle of coins stuffed deep into the toe. He moved some of this into his purse and unfastened his pants and produced another bundle of coins. I keep saying bottle. Bundle of coins and blah, 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 blah. And moved some money into his purse as well. The key was to keep a proper amount in your purse. Too little and they would be disappointed and prone to look for more, and too much they would be excited and might get too greedy. Concerned caller: "Hi, how do I phone into the show?" Oh, you have a very fun name, and it seems like a very amusing sense of humor. I'm almost tempted to let you, but the thing is, you might say something racist. So you can type in your question. I'd be happy to answer it. I'll even use a voice to what you'd like to say. "Oh, wow, thanks so much." "No, I'm an adult." "Welcome, I'm an adult. I'm Sky." That was my dad joke. "I have a college degree." Do you? Let's see. Here we go. There was a third bundle of coins baked into the stale loaf of bread that he only kept and the most desperate of criminals would be interested in. He left that alone for now, as well as the whole silver talent he had hidden in a jar of ink. Over the years, he had come to think of the last as more of a luck piece. No one had ever found that. He had to admit, it was probably the most silver robbery he had ever been through. They had been genteel, efficient, and not terribly savvy. Losing the horse and saddle was hard, but he could buy another in Abbott's Ford and still have enough money to live comfortably until he finished this foolishness to meet up with Scarpy and Tria. Feeling an urgent call of nature, the chronicler pushed away through the blood-red sumac onto the side of the road. He was rebuttoning his pants when a sudden motion in the underbrush was a dark shape thrashed its way free of some nearby bushes. The chronicler staggered back, crying out in alarm before he realized it was nothing more than a crow beating its wings into flight. Chuckling at his own foolishness, he straightened his clothes, made his way back to the road through the sumac, brushing away invisible strands of spiderwebs that clung to and tickled his face. As he shouldered his travel sack and satchel, the chronicler found himself feeling remarkably lighthearted. The worst had happened, and it hadn't been that bad. A breeze tussled through the trees, sending poplar leaves spinning like golden coins down the rutted dirt road. It was a beautiful day. Well, now, this is new. Welcome, Obi-Wan. Good to see you. Chapter 3. Kind of want to make some hot cocoa or tea. We've been chatting, reading, and decorating the Christmas tree back there. You can't really see it in all of its glory. I have to bring it to you guys, but then I'd have to unplug it, and I don't want to. And then for those of you waiting for ASMR sounds. ASMR. Just need glasses to make it an official book club. Right. Chapter 3. Wooden Word. Coat was leafing idly through a book, trying to ignore the silence of an empty inn when the door opened and Graham backed into the room. Just got done with it, Graham maneuvered through the maze of tables with exaggerated care. I was going to bring it in last night, but then I thought, one last coat of oil, rub it in, let it dry. Can't say I'm sorry I did. Lord and lady, it's beautiful as anything these hands have ever made. A small line formed between the innkeeper's eyebrows. Then, seeing the flat bundle in the man's arms, he brightened. Ah, a mounting board! Coat smiled tiredly. I'm sorry, Graham, it's been so long, I almost forgotten. Graham gave him a bit of a strange look. 4 months ain't long for wood to... 4 months ain't long for wood all the way from Erin. Not with the roads being as bad as they are. Concerned caller asks, do you have a Twitter account? I'm a social media influencer. Yes, I do. The name of my channel is SkyMcSparkle, and I am SkyMcSparkle on Twitter as well. That's not what I sound like. Oh man, I gotta that's the only voice I can think of right now. What were we doing when we were doing... Okay, well, let me try another one. Well, no, that's the only voice I have in my head right now. You guys remember when I used to do the reading in that weird, like, southern hickish voice? Like, not true southern, but mixture of, like, redneck, whatever. Hi, Rosa. Auntie Bernard. You know it. Did you know that that sound that he used to make, the actually came some kids in his high school, they used to make that sound when they were bullying people, like and then he just added it to his character. It's so funny. In fact, the innkeeper himself seemed rather sickly. Not exactly unhealthy, but hollow. Wan, like a plant that's been moved into the wrong sort of soil and lacking something vital. It had begun to wilt. Graham noted the difference. The innkeeper's gestures weren't as extravagant. His voice wasn't as deep. His eyes weren't as bright as they had been a month ago. Their color seemed duller. They were less sea foam, less green grass than they had been. Now they were like riverweed, like the bottom of a glass bottle. And his hair had been bright before, the color of flame, and now it just seemed red. Just red hair color, really. Coat drew back the cloth and looked underneath. The wood was a dark charcoal color with a black grain, heavy as a sheet of iron. 3 dark pegs were set above... Come on, read smoothly. 3 dark pegs were set above a word chiseled into the wood. Folly, Graham read. Odd name for a sword. Coat nodded, his face carefully blank. How much do I owe you? He asked quietly. Graham thought for a moment. After what you've given me to cover the cost of wood... There was a cunning glimmer in the man's eyes. About 1 in 3. Coat handed over 2 talents. Keep the rest. Difficult wood to work with. That it is, Graham said with satisfaction. Like stone under a saw. Try a chisel, like iron. Then after all the shouting was done, I couldn't char it. I noticed that. Coe said with a flicker of curiosity, running his finger along the darker groove the letters had made in the wood. How did you manage it? Well, Graham said smugly. After wasting half a day, I took it over to the smithy. Me and the boy managed to swear it in hot iron. It took us better than 2 hours to get it black. Not a wisp of smoke. But it made a stink like old leather and clover. Damnedest thing. What sort of wood doesn't burn? Graham waited a minute, but the innkeeper made no signs of having heard. Coat roused himself enough to look around the room. Can't leave that to me, I think. I haven't quite decided where to put it. Graham lifted a handful of iron nails and bid the housekeeper a good day. Coat remained at the bar, idly running his hands over the wood and the word. Before too long, Bass came out of the kitchen and looked over his teacher's shoulder. There was a long moment of silence, like a tribute given to the dead. Eventually, Bass spoke up. May I ask a question, Reshi? Coat smiled gently. Always, Bass. A troublesome question? Those tend to be the only worthwhile kind. They remained staring at the object at the bar for another silent moment, as if trying to commit the word to memory. Folly. Just tweeted about the show. Should be anywhere between 3,000 and 4,000 people here shortly. Really? Well, that's nerve-wracking. That is nerve-wracking. Concerned caller. I need to call someone about my concern. Hi, Robert. Lol, creeping here. What's up, Robert? Oh my gosh. You did. Well, thank you. Thank you, concerned caller. I really appreciate that. Let me give you a follow back. Boop. I run a very successful Twitter account with 57 people. Go into people's streams and I ask how I can phone into the show. I clip the reactions and post them. Oh, there you go. They remained staring at the object for far longer than a silent moment, as if trying to commit the word to memory. Folly. Bass struggled for a moment, opening his mouth, then closed it with a frustrated look, then repeated the process. Out with it, Coe said firmly. The way you said 57 people seemed like a dig. No, I'm sarcastic. No, I didn't mean it like that. It's my sense of humor. I did get myself. It's what is it? Self-deprecating humor. And then it comes off as that. I see it. When I get Ninja to respond, we'll see who's laughing then. We'll see. You should fight Ninja to you should challenge him to a duel. In 10 minutes, the inn was a different place. Coins rained on the bar. Cheese and fruit were set on platters, and a large copper pot was hung to simmer in the kitchen. Men moved tables and chairs, about to better suit their groups of nearly a dozen people. Co-identified them as they came in. 2 men, 2 women, wagoners, rough for the years of being outside and smiling to be spending them in a night out of the wind. 3 guards with hard eyes smelling of iron. A tinker with a pot-belly and a ready smile showing his face, few remaining teeth. 2 young men, one sandied hair, one dark, well-dressed and well-spoken. Travelers sensible enough to hook up with a larger group for protection on the road. Did you buy this book today? No, this book I've read this particular book 3 times. The version before this, I read it enough until I read it in half, so I'm just being super careful with the spine. I know I should buy hardback books, but when I do things like move, they get too heavy, and yeah. It's a very well cut book. Thank you. I'm trying not to crack the spine. Like, there's a book I've had to repurchase a few times. Let me find it. Ow. And this one. Okay, so this book, it's something like 30 to 40 pages left and gave up on it. I just don't really care what happened. Was not invested in the story. Aww. So this book, because of the material this paperback is made out of, it's laminated. I've read this book about 30 something times, and the only crack in it is right here. This one I've read a shiz ton. It's like a really old version of Beauty and the Beast, and it is dying. It is a mess. I got it like this. I didn't do this. But I figure because it's already a mess, I can kind of just like crack it and just enjoy the split. This one is bent as well because it's not like the best quality paperback, and you can kind of see how it just like cuts itself. And then this one is a very good book. I didn't realize it was the 3rd in the series. I thought it was the 1st. I just started reading it. I was just so enamored. I've reread it quite a few times, and it's like, boop. But the worst crack by far is in this one. By far. Oh, man. I don't know. I haven't found my perfect version of Beauty and the Beast. Ball Central, love you. Champ, love you too, Peter. Okay, get back to my book. So I'm being careful with this one. Cracking books. What is Army intelligence? It depends. I was an interrogator. Who are you talking to? Are there other people? Yes. So I stream on 4 different, I stream on 4 platforms. So I'm on YouTube, Twitch, Mixer, and Facebook all at once. So I have quite a few people to talk to today. Yeah. Restream, yep. Let's see, where was I? The settling-in period lasted about an hour or two. Prices of rooms were dicked over. Friendly arguments started about who slept with whom. Minor necessities were brought from the wagons or saddlebags, and baths were requested and water heated. Hay was taken to the horses, coat topped off oil in all the lamps. The tinkerer hurried outside to make use of the remaining daylight. He walked with his two-wheel mule cart through the town streets, and children crowded around him, begging for candy and stories and shims. When it became apparent that nothing was going to be handed out, most of them lost interest. They formed a circle with a boy in the middle and started to clap, keeping the beat with a children's song that had been ages old when the grandparents had chanted it. When the hearth fire burns and turns blue, what do you do? What do you do? Run outside, run and hide. Laughing, the boy in the middle tried to break out of the circle, with the other children pushing him back. Tinker, the old man's voice rang with a bell. Pot mender, knife grinder, willow wand, water finder, cut cork, mother leaf, silk scarves, and of city streets, writing paper sweetmeats. This drew the attention of the children. They flocked back to him, making a small parade as he walked down the street singing, "Belt leather, black pepper, fine lace and bright feather, tinker in a town tonight. Gone tomorrow, working through the evening light. Come wife, come daughter, I've small cloth and rose water." After a couple minutes, he settled outside the waystone, set up his sharpening wheel, and began to grind the knife. Who would you interrogate and why? What was the nature of interrogations? Can I talk about it? No, I can't. I interrogated people because I was in the army and that was my job, to get information about things and stuff. And that's all I'm allowed to say. As the adults began to gather around the old man, the children returned to their game. The girl in the center of the circle put a hand over her eyes and tried to catch the other children as they ran away, clapping and chanting. When his eyes are black as crow, where do you go? Near and far, here they are. The tinker dealt with everyone in turn, sometimes 2 or 3 at a time. He traded sharp knives for dull ones and small coins. He sold shears, needles, copper pots, and small bottles that wives hid quickly after buying them. He traded buttons for bags of cinnamon and salt, limes for tonneau, chocolate from Tarbine, polished horn from Eric. All the while children continued to sing. See the man without a face, moving like a ghost from place to place. What's their plan? What's their plan? Chandrian, Chandrian. Co guessed that the travelers had been together a month or so, long enough to become comfortable with each other, not long enough to be squabbling over small things. They smelled of road dust and horses. He breathed it in like perfume. Best of all was the noise. Leather cracking, men laughing, the fire crackled and spat. The women flirted. Someone even knocked over a chair. For the first time in a long time, there was no silence in the Waystone Inn. Or if there was, it was too faint to be noticed, or too well hidden. Coat was in the middle of it all, always moving like a man tending a large, complex machine, ready to drink just as a person called for it. He talked and listened in the right amounts. He laughed at jokes, shook hands, smiled, and whisked coins off the bar as if he truly needed the money. Cheer 1! What's a good anime to watch? Ooh. Have you seen Death Note? Is Death Note your thing? I've heard lots of... No, there are many people that like Death Note. If you want something girly, you can watch Fruits Basket. If you want something very long and drawn out, you can watch Bleach. It's almost as long. Yeah, I love Death Note. Bleach reminds me of Dragon Ball, like when they're all leveling up. And Bleach is the same way. It takes like 8 episodes just to level up. Like, what are you doing? Why is that a thing? It drives me crazy. Let's see. Ronin Kenshin. No? There are inappropriate ones as well. It's a weird one, but it has its moments. I don't know if I want to admit that I watched that one. I'm not gonna admit it. I'm gonna go back to reading. Because it's so weird. Dragon Ball Z. Obi. Hi, Obi. My kids like the weird ones. I don't know. This one has like sexual undertones though. It's Inu X Buku Secret Service. Here, since you guys are asking questions and interrupting my books, I will admit it. It's just, it gets so weird. Okay. Inu X. It's just so weird. Ghost Gaming. I won 2 bits because you watch good anime. Oh, thank you. You want the truth? You can't handle the truth. None of you can handle the truth. Okay, I'll show you. It gets like really weird. Okay. So I will admit, it gets really weird. But it's like a guilty pleasure of mine. But it's strange that actually wait. There's one. What is it? Snow White with red hair. It was actually very good storytelling. I really enjoyed the first season. Oh, it is called Snow White with the red hair. Sen and Shirayuki. Yes. Ooh, yeah. So I enjoyed Akagami no Shirayuki Hime. I don't speak anything literate, apparently. Let me put it on, so you guys can see this one. Snow White with the red hair. I enjoyed the storytelling on this one. Yeah. Yeah, it was good. There's also, there's one, ooh, what is it? There's a good one. Would it be on Crunchyroll? Welcome to the stream. I'm getting asked questions about anime, so I'm just like answering people's questions. Oh gosh, it was anime with magic. Skull face guy. Ah, yes. Hey, that actually worked. Ancient Magus Bride. I enjoyed that one as well. Good night, Ghost Gamer. Hi, Peter. Well, anyway. There, I answered questions. Oh, did my thing get bigger, or is it just on a different screen? Okay. Yu-Gi-Oh! My brother used to watch Yu-Gi-Oh! All the time. He made me go by him. Do I speak another language? Oui. Je parle français. Parce que ma mère, c'est Cajun. Il lives in Idaho. So, my significant other is Vietnamese, so I'm learning his language so that I can talk to his grandma. Yeah, because I love his grandmas. They're both really, really great people. And grandmas are kind of the best. I only get to see mine like once every 10 years, so grandmas are special. Alright, back to the book. Oh, where was I before we got distracted with anime? Hours later, the common room had a warm, jovial feel to it. Coat was kneeling at the hearth building the fire when someone spoke up behind him. Kvothe? The innkeeper turned around, wearing a slightly confused smile. Sir? It was one of those well-dressed travelers. He swayed a little. You're Kvothe. Coat, sir. Coat replied in an indulgent tone that mothers used with children and innkeepers use on drunks. Kvothe the Bloodless. The man pressed ahead with the dogged persistence of the inebriated. You look familiar, and I couldn't put a finger on it. He smiled proudly and tapped his finger to his nose. Then I heard you sing, and I knew it was you. I heard you in your mirror once, cried my eyes out afterwards. Never heard anything like it before, and it broke my heart. Hi, Joe. The young man's sentences grew jumbled as he continued, but his face remained earnest. I knew it couldn't be you, but I thought it was, even though... Who else has your hair? He shook his head, trying unsuccessfully to clear it. I saw the place in a mirror where you killed him, but the fountain and the cobblestones were shattered. He frowned and concentrated on the word shattered. They say no one can mend them. The sandy-haired man paused again, squinting for focus, and he seemed surprised by the innkeeper's reaction. The red-haired man was grinning. Are you saying I look like Kvothe? The Kvothe? I've always thought so myself. I have an engraving of him in the back. My assistant teases me for it. Will you tell him just like you told me? Coat threw a final log onto the fire and stood. But as he stepped from the hearth, one of his legs twisted under him and he fell heavily onto the floor, knocking over a chair. Several of the travelers hurried over, but the innkeeper was already on his feet, waving people back to their seats. No, fine. Sorry to startle any of you. In spite of the grin, it was obvious he'd hurt himself. His face was tight with pain, and he leaned heavily on the chair for support. Took an arrow to the knee, Skyrim! Took an arrow to the knee on my way through the Eld 3 summers ago. It gives out on me every now and then, he grimaced and said wistfully. It's made me give up on a good life like being on the road. He reached down to touch his oddly bent leg tenderly. One of the mercenaries spoke up. I'd put poultice on something like that. It'll swell terrible. Coat touched it again. I think you're wise, sir. He turned around to the sandy-haired man who stood swaying slightly by the fireplace. Could you do me a favor, son? The man nodded dumbly. Just close the flue. He gestured to the fireplace. Bast, will you help me upstairs? Hello, stock tester. Balls, balls, balls. Yes, this is my merch. It's available in our merch store. So if you want to wear your love of balls on your chest. I also have a really, really funny shirt with a cat with testicles on it. You should go check it out. It's great. Let's see, where was I? Damn. Well, hello. This is amazing. Hi. Welcome, everybody. Please keep reading. I will. Bast hurried over and drew Coat's arm around his shoulders. Coat leaned on him with every other step as they made their way through the doorway of the stairs. Arrow to the leg? He asked under his breath. Are you really embarrassed from taking a little fall? Thank God you're as gullible as they are, Coat said sharply as soon as they were out of sight. He began to curse under his breath and climbed a few more steps, his knee obviously uninjured. Best's eyes were wide and narrowed. Coat stopped at the top of the stairs, rubbing his eyes. One of them knows who I am, Coat frowned. Suspects. Which one? Bast asked with a mix of apprehension and anger. Green shirt, sandy hair, the one nearest by me at the fireplace. Give him something that'll make him sleep. He's already been drinking, and no one will think twice if he happens to pass out. Bast thought briefly. Nightmane? McKenna. Bast raised an eyebrow, but nodded. Coat straightened. Listen 3 times, Bast. Bast blinked once and nodded. Coat spoke crisply and cleanly. I was a city-licensed escort from Raylan. Wounded while successfully defending a caravan. Arrow to right knee. 3 years ago. Summer. A grateful Caldish merchant gave me money to start an inn, and his name was Dolan. We're traveling from Peruvius. Mention it casually. Do you have it? I hear you 3 times, Rushy, Bast said formally. Go. Stock teaser. Dead dog is bleeding. There's a dead dog behind you. It's crying. Help it. Dead dog. Dead dog. There's no dog. Dog's over there. But there's about to be a dead dog being resurrected underneath your bed. If you piss me off, it'll... Cats versus Gers. Cats will win versus Gers every time. Oh, God. The blanket. Killed it. You're welcome. Killed the dog just for you. That's one dead blanket. Half an hour later, Bast brought a bowl to his master's room, reassuring him that everything was well downstairs. Coat nodded and gave terse instructions that he had not to be disturbed for the rest of the night. Closing the doors behind himself, Bast's expression was worried. He stood at the top of the stairs for some time, trying to think of something he could do. It is hardly to say what troubled Bast so much. Coat didn't seem noticeably changed in any way, except for perhaps that he moved a little slower and whatever small spark that was in the night's activity had lit behind his eyes. We're dimmer now. I need to drink water. Coat sat in front of the fire and ate his meal mechanically, as if he were simply finding a place inside of himself to keep the food. After the last bite, he sat staring into nothing, not remembering what he had eaten and what it tasted like. Calling us creeps always. I'm a creep. Raging Knight. Wasn't expecting to see a blanket executed tonight, but okay. I want all my audiobooks read by Sky from now on and forever. It's just so you can enjoy the breaks I take by murdering things. This was my bedtime story. The fire snapped, making him blink and look around the room. He looked down at his hands. One curled inside the other, resting in his lap. After a moment, he lifted and spreaded them, as if warming them by the fire. They were graceful, with long, delicate fingers. He watched them tentatively, as if they were expecting them to do something on their own. Then he lowered them into his lap, one hand lightly cupping the other, returning to watch the fire, expressionless, motionless. He sat there until there was nothing left but gray ash dulling glowing coals. He was undressed for bed. A fire flared. The red light traced faint lines across his body, across his back, across his arms, and all the scars were smooth and silver and streaking against him in the light, like little lines of gentle remembering. The flare of the flame revealed them all briefly. Old wounds, new. All the scars were smooth and silver except for one. The fire flickered and died. Sleep met him like a lover in his empty bed. Enable donations. Take my donations so we can donate points. I don't know what that is. The travelers left early the next morning. Bass tended to their knees, explaining his master knees were swollen, and quite badly, and he didn't feel up to taking the stairs so early in the day. Everyone understood except for the sandy-haired merchant's son, who was too groggy to understand much of anything. Hi, Ramon. The guards exchanged smiles, rolled their eyes, while the tinker gave an impromptu sermon on the subject of temperance. Bast recommended several unpleasant hangover cures. After they left, Bast tended to the end, which was no great chore, and there were no customers. Most of his time was spent trying to find ways to amuse himself. Are you reading War and Peace? No, reading Name of the Wind. After they left, Bast tended to end. Whoa, we read that. I'm getting all tongue-tied because there's... So how does this book end? It ends as a continuation into book 2. After they left, Bast tended the end, which was no great chore, as there were no customers. Most of the time was spent trying to find ways to amuse himself. Sometime afternoon, Coat came down the stairs to find him crushing some walnuts on the bar with a heavy leather-bound book. "Good morning, Reshi." "Good morning, Bass." Coat said. "Any news?" "The Rising boy stopped by. Wanted to know if we need any mutton." Coat nodded, almost as if he had been suspecting the news. "How much did you order?" Bass made a face. "I hate mutton, Reshi. Tastes like wet mittens." Coat shrugged and made his way to the door. "I've got some errands to run. Keep an eye on things, will you?" "I always do." Outside the Waystone Inn, the air lay still and heavy on the empty dirt road that ran through the center of the town. The sky was a featureless gray sheet of cloud that looked as if it wanted to rain but couldn't quite work up the energy. Hello, welcome everybody. Coat walked across the street and opened the front of the smithy. The smith wore his hair chopped short and his beard thick and bushy. As Coat watched, he carefully drove a pair of nails through the sky's blade collar, fixing it firmly to a curved wooden handle. "Hello, Caleb." The smith leaned the scythe up against the wall. What can I do for you, Master Coat? I like your face. Well, welcome. What up? Mommy, can I have mutton? You guys are such jokers. What's my shirt say? Well, chat, what does my shirt say? Balls, balls, balls. Okay. Get back to reading. I have balls. I have balls too. Oh man, I've got big pairs of balls. It's like my cursing of choice. And that's a ballsy shirt. But John Smith coming in here with a joke. Red, blue, and sparkly balls. You know it. Aw, thank you. Thanks, Ring. Okay, we were talking about mutton, right? That we got distracted by hanging out and being friends, eh? Bull, blah, 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 blinking, blinking, sky. Here we go. Did the Ryson boys stop by your place too? Still losing sheep? Co asked. Actually, some of the lost ones finally turned up. Torn up, awful, practically shredded. Wolves? Co asked. The Smith shrugged. It was the wrong time of year, but what else would it be? A bear? I guess they're just selling off what they have and what they can't watch over properly. They've been just so short-handed and all. Sorry to interrupt, but what is this book about? So it's slowly built. Okay, the beginning of this book is slow and then it gets really badass. So our main guy is Kavoth, and he is a Kingslayer. We are learning about this is his origin story, and it'll be told by him once we get the chronicler here. So the guy that writes his story is here, and then he tells it from his point of view for the rest of the book. What else am I streaming on? YouTube, Mixer, Twitch, and Facebook all at once. My fingernail polish, it's red, and then I got annoyed and removed it from some fingers, and I probably have to paint all of my nails again before I see my in-laws. Holy shit, I know, I do 4 things at once. Just ignore Nightbot because Nightbot is toxic. Jim, when I read the description, I thought you were kidding. I love it. No. I'm reading. Okay. For those of you who are here and wondering why I'm reading instead of playing video games today, I went to the hospital and I had an arthrogram done. So they injected lidocaine down into my bone, and they injected a contrast dye, and then I got an MRI on my hip and lower back. So it's been real painful for me today. It's like having a funny bone, like hitting your funny bone, but in your hip. So what do I use on my elbows? Nothing. I just have good skin. This is so weird. It's like, where except for a stream with a girl in it can you ask, like, what lotion do you use on your elbows? Like, bro, would you ask your man friends that? Like, what medical problems are you having? I have a army injury. I'm a disabled veteran. So they are trying to pinpoint what exactly has been wrong with me in the last 4 years. Clam juice is gruel. It is gruel. Let's see. Short-handed? Had to let their hired man go because of taxes. Their oldest son took the king's coin early this summer and he's off the rebels and mint it now. Manera's co-corrected gently. If you ever see their boy again, you let him know I'd be willing to buy about 3 halves. Thank you for your service. Oh, thanks for being nice. How many people have you shot? No. My mom just got a new hip titanium. She's bionic mom now. Ooh. Damn, you just upgraded to guarantee hit. No one know what my name means. Well, Sky, I'm gonna go play the culling with Stock. All right, have fun, cats. Have fun, Stock. Enjoy. How did I please myself in the army? I read. That's how I pleased myself. I didn't know if you were gonna stop by and all. Old Cop came for the rest for the day before yesterday. I had a couple extras just in case. Cope picked up a rod of iron, about 2 feet long, and swung it casually with one hand. Clever man. How much do I like my shirt? Quite a bit, considering it's my merch. So, yeah. The smith nodded for a gesture for Coat to follow him. You know what? This part's slow. Skip forward a bit. Yeah. Some of this is extremely, extremely slow. You have merch? Yes, I do. It's this, and then I have a shirt with a... I'll just bring it up so you can see what's on the... Would it be possible to see my Christmas tree? Well, we're slowly building it together. Let's see. I can bring my Christmas tree over a little closer. It just hurts to walk. How are you? What is this? Bedtime stories? Yes, Corrupted. I'm reading a big book to you guys. We're like 1/8 of the way through. Since you guys asked to see my tree, I will plug it in. Is there a plug here? That'll make my life easier. Okay. So each ornament is a new subscriber. We've got our top hat, paper mache giraffe, blown glass, bells, a leaf, a dragon, a martini glass with a mouse in it, a smoking pipe mouse. Yeah, we're just slowly coming together, our little elephant. What up with the Anaheim Angels? That's Nukes. That's my significant other's. He only owns 2 ornaments, and it's these, so I just put them on. So yeah, I'll just leave it here. Why not? I've got enough room for my tree and for me. Really asked me, I was never playing with you. You never even piqued my interest, sir. The Chronicler walked. Yesterday he limped, but today there was no part for his feet that didn't hurt. So limping did no good. He had searched for horses in Abbotsford and Ranish, offering outrageous prices to even the most broken down animals. But in small towns like these, people didn't have horses to spare, especially not with the harvest fast approaching. Good morning, Gooners. Look at my name. I know you're interested. Right. I dare you to come up with a good one that would be symbolic, represent my name for Christmas. Corrupted rage? I would think like a demonic bunny would be the perfect Christmas ornament for you. And apparently ring pop smells like a New York public dumpster. Someone's gonna be single forever. Unless you want to get it together with a gruely axe wound. You can both be gashes together. Despite a day's hardly walking, he was still on the road as the night fell, making the rutted dirt road a stumbling ground half-seen shapes. After 2 hours of fumbling through the dark, the chronicler saw light flickering through the trees, and abandoned any thought of making it to nowhere that night, deciding a farmstead's hospitality would be welcome enough. Alright. Hey, Gooners. Here. Let's do something a little fun. Do this. Boop. Oh, that's gonna be fun. I can't wait. So nice the children can all be home for the holidays. There we go. All done. He left the road, blundering through the trees in the light, but the fire was farther away than he had thought, and larger. It wasn't the lamplight from the house or even sparks from a campfire. It was a bonfire roaring in the ruins of an old house. Little more than 2 crumbling stone walls. Huddled into the corner with those 2 walls, there was a man. He wore a heavy hooded cloak, bundled up as if it were full winter and not the mild autumn evening. This book is going to take a while because I've got dumbasses coming in here. Newcomb should be in the background playing soft acoustic guitar. I think the only guitar he can really get away with playing might be air guitar. Just being honest. The chronicler's hopes rose at the sight of a small cook fire with a pot hanging over it, but as he came close, he caught a foul scent mingling with the wood smoke. It reeked of burning hair and rotting flowers. Chronicler quickly decided that whatever the man was cooking in the iron pot, he wanted none of it. Still, even the place was next to a fire and curling up to the side of the road was irresistible. The chronicler stepped into the circle of firelight. I saw your... He stopped as the figure sprang quickly to its feet, sword held in both hands. No, not a sword. A long, dark kugel of some sort, too regularly shaped to be a piece of firewood. The chronicler stopped dead in his tracks. I was just looking for a place to sleep, he said quickly, his hands unconsciously clutching the circle of iron around his neck. I don't want any trouble. I'll leave you to your dinner. He took a step backward. The figure relaxed, and the cudgel dropped in the grate metallically against the stone. Charred body of God, what are you doing here at this time of night? I was heading to nowhere and saw your fire. You just follow a strange fire into the woods at night? The hood figure asked. Might as well come here. He motioned the chronicler closer, and the scribe saw that he was wearing thick leather gloves. Tell who anyway? Have you had bad luck your whole life, or have you been saving it up for tonight? Should be done some editing with this one so we can just sit without all the interruptions. Not that I don't like talking with you, but the edited version would be awesome. Oh, that's sweet. I just need to stop and be able to talk to people and then ban the brain dead people. You know how it goes. I always head for strange fires in the woods, don't you? I don't know who you're waiting for, the chronicler said, taking a step backward, but I'm sure you'd rather do it alone. Shut up and listen, the man said sharply. I don't know how much time we have. He looked down and rubbed his face. God, I never know how much to tell you people. If you don't believe me, you'll think I'm crazy. If you do believe me, you'll panic and be worse than useless. He looked back up at the chronicler, saw that he didn't move. Get over here, damn you. If you go back out there, you're good as dead. The chronicler glanced over his shoulder into the dark of the forest. Why? What's out there? The man gave a short, bitter laugh and shook his head in aspiration. Honestly? He ran his hand absent-mindedly through his hair, brushing his hood back in the process. In the firelight, his hair was impossibly red, his eyes a shocking, vibrant green. He looked at the chronicler, sizing him up. Demons. Demons in the shape of big black spiders. The chronicler relaxed. There's no such thing as demons. From his tone, it was obvious he had said the same thing many, many times before. The red-haired man gave an incredulous laugh. Well, I guess we can all just go home then. He flashed a manic grin at the chronicler. Listen, I'm guessing you're an educated man. I respect that, and for the most part, you're right. His expression was serious. But here, right now, tonight, you're wrong. Wrong as wrong can be. You don't want to be outside of the fire when you figure that out. The flat certainty in the man's voice chilled the chronicler's back. Feeling more than slightly foolish, he stepped delicately around to the other side of the bonfire. The man sized him up quickly. I don't suppose you have a weapon. The chronicler shook his head. Doesn't really matter. A sword wouldn't do you much good. He handed the chronicler a heavy piece of firewood. You probably won't be able to hit one, but it's worth a try. They're fast. If one of them gets you, just fall down. Try to land on it, crush it with your body, roll on it. If one gets a hold of you, throw it into the fire. Facebook keeps cutting out on me. Enjoyed the stream. See you next time. Later, Rich. He drew his hood back over his head, speaking quickly. If you have any extra clothes, put them on. If you have a blanket you can wrap... He stopped suddenly and looked out across the circle of firelight. Get your back against the wall, he said abruptly, bringing his iron cudgeling up with his hands. The chronicler looked past the bonfire. Something dark was moving in the trees. They came into the light, moving low across the ground, black shapes, many-legged and as large as cartwheels. One quicker than the rest rushed into the firelight, without hesitating, moving with disturbing, sinuous speed of a scuttling insect. Before the chronicler could raise a piece of wood, the thing skittered around sideways around the bonfire and sprang on him, quick as a cricket. The chronicler threw up his hands just as the big black thing struck his face and chest. His cold, hard legs scrabbling on for something to hold, and he felt bright strips of pain along the backs of his arms. Staggering away, the scribe fell to his heels through a snag on the rough ground, and he became toppled over backwards, arms flailing wildly. As he fell, the chronicler caught one last glimpse of the circle of firelight. One of the black things were scuttling out of the dark, their feet beating into a staccato rhythm against the tree roots. Through the rocks and the leaves. On the other side of the fire, the man with the heavy cloak that wielded the iron cudgely was ready with both hands. He stood perfectly still, perfectly silent, waiting. Still, falling backwards with the dark thing on top of him, the chronicler felt a dull, dark explosion in the back of his skull as he struck a stone wall behind him, and the world slowed, turning blurry and then black. Demons, the shape of big black spiders. Great, no sleep for me tonight. I'm glad I can horrify you. This makes me happy. The chronicler opened his eyes to a confusing mask of dark shapes and firelight, and his skull throbbed. There were several lines of bright, clear ping crossing across the back of his arms, and a dull ache from the left side every time he drew a breath. After a long moment of concentration, the world came into a blurry focus. The bundled man sat nearby. He was no longer wearing gloves, and his heavy cloak hung off his body in loose tatters. But other than that, he seemed unscathed. His hood was up, hiding his face. "You're awake?" the man said curiously. "That's good. You can never be sure with a head wound." The hood tilted a bit. "Can you talk? Do you know where you are?" "Yes," the chronicler said thickly. It seemed to take too much effort to even utter a single word. "Even better. Now, third time pays for all. Do you think you can stand up and lend me a hand? We need to burn and bury these bodies." The chronicler moved his head a bit and felt suddenly dizzy and nauseous. "What happened?" "I may have broken a couple of your ribs. One of them was all over you. I didn't have a lot of options. I'm sorry for what that's worth. I've already stitched up the cuts on your arms. They should heal up nicely." "They're gone?" The hooded one nodded. "The squirrel don't retreat. They're like wasps from a hive. They keep attacking until they die." A horrified expression went over the chronicler's face. "There's a hive of these things?" "Dear God, no. There was just 5. Still, we have to burn and bury them just to be sure. Already cut the wood. We'll need ash and rowan." The chronicler gave a laugh, sounding slightly hysterical, just like the children's song. "Let me tell you what to do. Dig a pit that's 10 by 2. Ash and elm and rowan too." "Yes, indeed," the bundled man said dryly. "You'd be surprised what sorts of things can be hidden away in children's songs. But while I don't think we need the entire 10 feet down, I wouldn't refuse a little help." He trailed off meaningfully. The chronicler moved one hand to feel the back of his head gingerly, then looked at his fingers, surprised that they weren't covered in blood. "I think I'm fine," he said cautiously, levering himself up on one elbow into a sitting position. "Is there any—" His eyes flickered around and went limp, falling bonelessly backwards. His head struck the ground, bounced once, and then came to rest slightly tilted to the side. "Are we reading 50 Shades of Grey?" "No!" "Motivation! You're so naughty! So naughty! No!" We're reading Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. So we just killed some spider demons. Essentially. Yes. 5 spider demons? Like, they're so evil. So bad. But badass. Hi, Beavis. We did high five, team. Oh, I'm sorry. Gotta do it like this. Coat sat patiently for a few long moments, watching the unconscious man. When there was no movement, other than the chest slowly rising and falling, he came stiffly to his feet and knelt at the chronicler's side. Coat lifted one eyelid and then another and grunted at what he saw, not seeming particularly surprised. "I just don't suppose there's any chance of you waking up again?" he asked without much hope in his voice. He tapped the chronicler's pale cheek. "Not a chance, A drop of blood spotted the chronicler's head, followed quickly by another. Coat straightened up so that he was no longer leaning over the unconscious man and wiped the blood away as best as he could, which wasn't very well, as his hands were already smeared with it themselves. "Sorry," he said absently. He gave a deep sigh and pushed back his hood. His red hair was matted down against his head. Half his face was smeared with drying blood. Slowly he began to peel away the tattered remains of his cloak. Underneath was a leather blacksmith's apron, wildly scored with cuts. He removed that as well, revealing a plain gray shirt that was homespun. Both his shoulders and his left arm were dark and wet with blood. Coat fingered the buttons of his shirt for a moment, then decided against removing it. Climbing gingerly to his feet, he picked up a spade and slowly and painfully began to dig. So, I love your shirt. Thanks! It's part of my merch. So, if you want to get on that, and you want to wear some balls on your chest too, I got merch. I also have a shirt with a cat butt with testicles on it. Fun fact. Chapter 5. Notes. I'm gonna drink some water. It was well past midnight by the time Coat made it back to nowhere with the Chronicle's limp body slung across his lacerated shoulders. The town's houses and shops were dark and silent, but the Waystone Inn was full of light. Bass stood in the doorway, practically dancing with irritation. When he spotted the approaching figure, he rushed down the street, waving a piece of paper angrily. Let me grab a piece of paper. I want the Timmy discount. See what this says? Now I want you to appreciate my sense of humor here. I'm out, Sky. Going to bed. Good night. Awesome stream, by the way. Very unique. Dropped a like. Good night, Corrupted. Bass stood in the doorway, practically dancing with irritation. When he spotted the approaching figure rushing down the street, waving a piece of paper angrily. "A note? You sneak out and leave me a note?" He hissed angrily. "What am I, some dockside whore?" Coat turned around and shrugged the Chronicler's limp body into Bass's arms. "I knew you would just argue with me, Bass." Bass held the Chronicler easily in front of him. "It wasn't even a good note. If you're reading this, I am probably dead." "What sort of note is that?" That's a very solid note. I like that note. That is a note I'm gonna leave to Nuke in the morning when I go get breakfast. He's gonna wake up and be like, "The fuck?" You weren't supposed to find it till this morning, Coat said tiredly as they began to walk down the street. Bass looked down at the man he was carrying, as if noticing him for the first time. Neighbors. A note. Okay, they're on. "Who is this?" He shook him a little, eyeing him curiously before slinging him across the other shoulder like a burlap sack. "Some unlucky sod who happened to be on the road at the wrong time," Coat said dismissively. "Don't shake him too much. His head might be on a little bit loose." "What the hell did you sneak off for anyway?" Bass demanded as they entered the inn. "If you're gonna leave a note, you should at least tell me what." Bass' eyes widened as he saw Coat in the light of the inn, pale and streaked with dirt and blood. You can go ahead and worry if you want, Coat said dryly. It's every bit as bad as it looks. You went out hunting for them, didn't you? Bass hissed with his eyes wide. No, you kept a piece of one like Carter did. I can't believe you lied to me. To me! Coat sighed as he trudged up the stairs. Are you upset by the lie or the fact that you didn't catch me at it? He asked as he began to climb. Story time? That's right, Christian. We're reading a book. Are you upset by the lie or the fact that you didn't catch me in it? He asked as he began to climb. Bass sputtered. I'm upset that you thought you couldn't trust me. They let their conversation lapse as they opened one of the empty rooms into the second floor, undressed the chronicler, and tucked him snugly into bed. Coat left the man's satchel and travel sack on the floor nearby. Closing the door to the room behind him, Coat said, I trust you, Bass, but I wanted you safe. I knew I could handle it. I could have helped Reggie. Bass' tone was injured. You know I would have. You can still help, Bass, Coat said as he made his way to his room and sat on the heavy edge of his narrow bed. I need some stitching done. He began to unbutton his shirt. I could do it myself, but the tops of my shoulders and my back, they're hard to reach. Nonsense, Reggie, I'll do it. Coat made a gesture to the door. My supplies are down in the basement. Bass sniffed disdainfully. I will use my own needles, thank you very much. Good honest bone. None of your nasty, jagged iron things stabbing at you like little slivers of hate. He shivered. Stream and stone, it's frightening how primitive you people are. Bass bustled out of the room, leaving the door behind him open. Xbox gave cats $5. Ooh! And he got off. Oh my gosh. Coat slowly began removing his shirt, grimacing and sucking his breath through his teeth as the dried blood stuck and tugged at his wounds. His face went stoic again when Bass came into the room with a basin of water and began to clean him off. As the dried blood washed away, the world of scoring of long straight cuts became clear. They gaped redly against the innkeeper's fair skin, as if they had been slashed by a barber's razor and a piece of broken glass. There were perhaps a dozen cuts in all. Most of them were the tops of the shoulders, a few across the back and along the arms. One started at the top of his head and ran all the way down his scalp behind his ear. I thought you weren't supposed to bleed, Reshi, Bass said, bloodless and all that. Don't believe everything you hear in stories, Bass. They lie to you. Well, you weren't nearly as bad off as I thought, Bass said, wiping his hands clean. Though by all rights, you should have lost a piece of your ear. Were they wounded like that, the ones that attacked Carter? Not that I could see, Coat said. How many were there? 5? 5? Bass said, aghast. How many did you and the other fellow kill? He distracted one of them for a while, Coat said generously. Anpuin, Reshi, said, shaking his head, as he threaded the bone needle with something thinner and finer than gut. You should be dead. You should be dead twice. Coat shrugged. It's not the first time I should be dead, Bass. I'm a fair hand at avoiding it. Bass bent at his work. This will sting a bit, he said as his hands strangled gently. Honestly, Reshi, I can't see how you managed to stay alive this long. Coat struggled again and closed his eyes. Neither do I, Bass, he said. His voice was getting tired and gray. Hours later, the door to Coat's room cracked open and Bass peered inside. Hearing nothing but slowed, measured breathing, the young man walked softly to stand beside the bed and bent over the sleeping man. Bass eyed the color of his cheeks, smelled his breath, and lightly touched his forehead, his wrist, and the hollow of his throat above his heart. Then Bass drew a chair alongside of the bed, watching his master, listening to him breathe. After a moment, he reached out and brushed the unruly red hair away from his face, like a mother would a sleeping child. Then he began to sing softly, a tune lilting a little strange, almost like a lullaby. How old to watch a mortal kindle, then to dwindle day by day. Know their bright souls are tender, and the wind will have its way. Would I own you, fireland? What does your flickering portend? Bass' voice faded until at last he sat motionless, watching the rise and fall of his master's silent breathing through the long hours of the morning's early dark. Good night, Ramon. Sleep well. Chapter 6. The Price of Remembering. This is when it starts getting good. It was early evening of the next day before the chronicler came down the stairs of the common room of the Waystone Inn. Pale and unsteady, he carried his flat leather satchel under one arm. Coat sat behind the door, paging through the book. Ah, our unintentional guest, how's the head? Chronicler raised his hand and touched the back of his head. Throbs a bit when I move around too quickly, but it's still working. Glad to hear it, Coat said. Is this... are we nowhere? Coat nodded. You are, in fact, in the middle of nowhere. He made a dramatic sweeping gesture with one hand. Thriving metropolis, home to dozens. Chronicler stared at the redhead man behind the bar. He leaned against one of the tables for support. God's charred body, he breathed restlessly. Really is you, isn't it? Cheer 100! Woo woo! Ollie, thank you so much for the cheer. You know what? For that cheer. We got a Christmas ornament. Let's see. Red. There's blue there. Go right here. There we go. Thank you for the cheer. God's charred body, he said breathlessly. It really is you, isn't it? The innkeeper looked puzzled. I beg your pardon? I know you're gonna deny it, but what I saw last night, the innkeeper held up a hand, quieting him. Before we discuss the possibility that you've addled your wits with a crack to the head, tell me, how is the road to Tanu? What? The chronicler asked, irritated. I wasn't heading to Tanu. I was, Well, even aside from last night, the road's been pretty rough. I was robbed off by Abbotsford, and I've been on foot ever since. But it was worth it since you're actually here. The scribe glanced at the sword hanging over the bar and drew a deep breath, his expression becoming vaguely anxious. I'm not here to cause trouble, mind you. I'm not here because of the price on your head. He gave a weak smile. Not that I could hope to trouble you. Fine, the innkeeper interrupted and pulled out a white linen cloth and began to polish the bar. Who are you, then? You can call me the chronicler. I didn't ask what I could call you, Coat said. What is your name? Devon Locus. Ah, this is such a wholesome stream. I love this. Oh, thank you. Stock tester. I'm going to play Red Dead Redemption 2. I love the first one, and we'll have fun. World needs more book reading streams. Oh, really? You guys are enjoying this? I was really nervous about doing one. And so I chose a very adult book. Co stopped polishing the bar and looked up. Locks? You're related to Duke. Coat trailed off, nodding to himself. Yes, of course you are. Not a chronicler, the chronicler. He stared hard at the baldy man, looking him up and down. How about that, the great debunker himself? The chronicler relaxed slightly, obviously pleased to have his reputation precede him. I wasn't trying to be difficult before. I haven't thought of myself as Devon in years. I left the name long ago. He gave the innkeeper a significant look. I expect you know something of that yourself. Coe ignored the question. I read your books years ago, The Mating Habits of the Common Dracus. Quite an eye-opener for a young man with a head full of stories. He looked down as he began to move the white cloth along the grate of the bar again. I'll admit I was disappointed to learn that dragons didn't exist. That's a hard lesson for a boy to learn. The chronicler smiled. Honestly, I was a little disappointed myself. I went looking for a legend and found a lizard. A fascinating lizard, but a lizard just the same. And now you're here, Coe said. Have you come to prove that I don't exist? The chronicler laughed nervously. No, you see, we heard a rumor. We? Coe interrupted. I've been traveling with an old friend of yours, Scarpy. Take you under his wing, did he? Coe said to himself. How about that, Scarpy's apprentice? More a colleague, really. Coe nodded, still expressionless. I might have guessed he would be the one to find me. Rumor mongers, both of you. Chronicler's smile grew sour. He swallowed the first words that came to his lips and struggled for a moment to recapture his calm demeanor. So what can I do for you? Coe said as he lined up the clean linen cloth, did his best to keep up his innkeeper's smile. Something to eat, something to drink, a room for the night. At least dinosaurs aren't a complete disappointment, so if you're ever sad about dragons, just remember dinosaurs are a thing. The chronicler hesitated. I have it all right here, Coe gestured expansively to the bar. Old wine, smooth and pale, honey mead, dark ale, sweet fruit liquor, plum, cherry, green apple, blackberry. Coe pointed to the bottles in turn. Come now, surely you must want something, he spoke as he smiled, widening, showing way too many teeth for a friendly, sharp innkeeper. At times like this, his eyes grew cold, hard, and angry. The chronicler dropped his gaze. I thought that... You thought, Coe said derisively, dropping all pretense of a smile. I very much doubt that. Otherwise, you might have thought of how much danger you were putting me in by coming here. Chronicler's face grew red. I've heard that Kavoth was fearless, he said hotly. The innkeeper shrugged. Only priests and fools are fearless, and I have never been on the best terms with God. Chronicler frowned, aware that he was being baited. Listen, he said, you can... Excuse me. I need some water. My throat's dry now. Give me 1 moment, please. I will be right back. Water. Come on, leg. That hurts. Okay, I'll try again. Ooh, ow. Okay. Get all snuggled in. The chronicler frowned, aware that he was being baited. Listen, he continued calmly. I was extraordinarily careful. No one except Scarpy knew I was coming. I didn't mention you to anyone. I didn't expect to actually find you. Imagine my relief, Coe said sarcastically. Obviously disheartened, Chronicler spoke. I'll be the first to admit that my coming here may have been a mistake. He paused, giving Coat the opportunity to contradict him. Coat didn't. The chronicler gave a small, tight sigh and continued. But what's done is done. Wouldn't you consider? Coat shook his head. It was a long time ago. Not even 2 years ago, the chronicler protested. And I'm not who I was then, he said without pausing. And what was that exactly? Kavoth, he said simply, refusing to be drawn further into explanation. Now I am Coat. I tend to my inn, and that means beer is 3 shims and private rooms cost a copper. He began polishing the bar with a fierce intensity. As you said, done is done. Stories will take care of themselves, but... Coat looked up. For a second, the chronicler saw past the anger that lay glittered in the surface, and for a moment, he saw the pain underneath, raw and bloody, like a wound too deep for healing. Then Coat looked away, and only the anger remained. What possibly could you offer me that is worth the price of remembering? Welcome back. Everyone thinks you're dead. You don't get it, do you? Coat shook his head, stuck between amusement and expiration. That's the whole point. People don't look for you when you're dead. Old enemies don't try to settle scores. People don't come asking you for stories, he said acidly. Chronicler refused to break down. Other people say you're a myth. I am a myth, Coat said easily, making an extravagant gesture. A very special kind of myth that creates itself. The best lies about me are the ones I told. Sensing weakness, Chronicler continued. Some stories paint you as little more than a red-handed killer. I'm that too. Coat turned to polish the counter behind the bar. He shrugged again. Not as easily as before. I've killed men, and things that were more than men. Every one of them deserved it. The chronicler shook his head slowly. The stories say assassin, not hero, Kavoth, and the Arcane and Kavoth Kingslayer are 2 very different men. Coat stopped polishing the bar and turned his back onto the room. He nodded once without looking up. Some are even saying that there's a new Chandrian, a fresh terror in the night, and his hair is as red as the blood he spills. The important people know the difference, he said as if he were trying to convince himself. But his voice was weary and despairing without conviction. Jedi Goblin, we are more than men that are more than men. Yeah. The chronicler gave a small laugh. Certainly for now. But you of all people should realize that there is a thin line between truth and a compelling lie, between history and an entertaining story. The chronicler gave his words a minute to soak in. You know which will win. Give him time. Coat remained facing the back wall, hands flat on the counter, his head bowed slightly, as if a great weight was settling onto him, and he did not speak. The chronicler took an eager step forward, sensing victory. Some people say there was a woman. Balls, yes. What do they know? Coat's voice cut through like a saw through bone. What do they know about what happened? He spoke softly at the chronicler as the chronicler held his breath. They say chronicler's words stuck, suddenly drying his throat, and the room grew unnaturally quiet. Coat stood with his back to the room. A stillness in his body and a terrible silence clenched between his teeth. His right hand tangled with a white cloth made it slow and fast. 8 inches away, a bottle shattered. The smell of strawberries filled the air alongside a sound of splintering glass. A small noise inside, so great in the stillness, but it was enough to break the silence into small, sharp slivers. The Chronicler felt himself go cold as he suddenly realized what a dangerous game he was playing. So this is the difference between telling a story and being in one, he thought numbly. The fear. Coat turned. What can any of them... My thick book there, bud. Like the War of Flowers by Tad Williams. 662 pages. That's it. If I was reading this without reading out loud and like stuttering, I'd probably be here right now. Like, Coat turned. What can any of them know about her? He asked softly. The chronicler's breath stopped when he saw Kvot's face. The placid innkeeper's expression was like a shattered mask. Underneath, Kvot's expression was haunted. His eyes, half in this world, half else in the other, remembering. It should be a regular thing. Not many people can say their favorite streamer can read them a bedtime story. I'm glad. Chronicler found himself thinking of a story he had heard. One of the many. The story of how Kvothe had gone looking for his heart's desire. He had to trick a demon to get it. But once it rested in his hand, he was forced to fight an angel to keep it. I believe it, the chronicler forced himself thinking. Before it was just a story, but now I believe it, the face of a man who has killed an angel. What can any of them know about me? Coat demanded, numb anger in his voice. What can any of them know about any of this? He made a short, fierce gesture that seemed to take in everything, the broken bottle, the bar, the world. The chronicler swallowed against the dryness of his throat. Only what they're told. Coat sighed a long breath. Clever, you use my own best trick against me. You hold my story hostage. I would tell the truth. Nothing but the truth could break me. What's harder than the truth? A sickly mocking smile flickered across his face, and for a long moment, only the gentle tapping of drops against the floor kept the silence at bay. Finally, Coat walked through the doorway behind the bar. Chronicler stood awkwardly in the empty room, unsure of whether or not he had been dismissed. A few moments later, Coat returned with a bucket of soapy water. Without looking at the storyteller's direction, he began to gently and methodically wash his bottles one at a time. Coat wiped their bottoms, clean of the strawberry wine, and set them in the bar himself, between himself and the chronicler, as if they might defend him. So you went looking for a myth and found a man, he said without inflection, without looking up. You've heard stories and now you want the truth of things. Radiating in relief, the chronicler set down his satchel, grabbed one of his tablets, and with a slight tremors in his hand, held up his pen. We got wind of you a while back, just a whisper of a rumor. Didn't really expect. Chronicler paused, suddenly awkward. Thought you'd be older. I am, Coat said. The chronicler looked puzzled. Before he could say anything, the innkeeper continued. What brings you into this worthless corner of the world? An attempt at the Earl of Bandit the Bright? The chronicler said, puffing himself up slightly. 3 days from now in Tria. The innkeeper paused, bit polish. You expect me to make it to the Earl's Manor in 4 days. I'm a bit behind schedule, the chronicler admitted. My horse was stolen near Abbott's Ford. He glanced out the window in the darkened sky. But I'm willing to lose some sleep. I'll be off in the morning and out of your hair. Well, I wouldn't want to cost you sleep, Coat said sarcastically, his eyes gone hard again. I can tell you the whole thing in one breath. He cleared his throat. I trooped, traveled, loved, lost, trusted, and was betrayed. Write that down and burn it for all the good it'll do you. So this guy, this chronicler, the guy who goes around collecting these stories and debunking things around the world, he wants an epic tale told to him in a matter of a few hours. Like, if you want, and it's not just a tale, it's this guy's life story. That would just be a small summary. So I do not blame Kavoth for essentially calling him a dumbass. Like, there you go. Don't let the door hit you on your way out. Like, who can blame him? Bumble Cherry, this book is my favorite. It's my favorite too. I love it. So dark and twisty. You don't need to take it that way, the chronicler said quickly. We can take the whole night if you want, just a few hours in the morning as well. How gracious, Kavoth snapped. You'll have me tell my story in an evening with no time to collect myself, no time to prepare. His mouth made a thin line. Oh no. Go dally with your Earl of none of it. Chronicle spoke quickly. If you're certain you'll need, yes. Kavoth set a bottle down hard on the counter. Here, let me do it for dramatic effect. It's safe to say I'll need more time than that. And you'll get none of it tonight. A real story takes time to prepare. The chronicler frowned nervously and ran his hands through his hair. I could spend tomorrow collecting your story, he trailed off at the sight of Coat shaking his head. After a pause, he started again, almost talking to himself. If I pick up a horse in Baden, I can give you all day tomorrow, most of the night, and a piece of the following day. I hate writing a night, but I'll need 3 days, Coat said. I'm quite sure of it. The chronicler blanched. But the Earl... Coat waved his hands dismissively. No one needs 3 days, the chronicler said firmly. I interviewed Oren Velsider. Oren Velsider, mind you. He's 80 years old and done 200 years worth of living. 500 if you count the lice. He sought me out, chronicler with the particular emphasis. He only took 2 days. That's my offer, the innkeeper said simply. I'll do this properly or not at all. Hold on a moment, the chronicler brightened suddenly. I've been thinking about this all backwards. He shook his head at his own foolishness. I'll just go visit the Earl, then come back, and you can have all the time you like then. I could even bring Scarpy back with me. Coat gave the chronicler a look of profound disdain. What gives you the slightest impression that I would be here when you come back? He asked incredulously. For that matter, what makes you think that you're simply free to walk out of here knowing what you know? The chronicler went very still. He swallowed and started again. Are you saying that? The story will take 3 days, Kavoth interrupted. Starting tomorrow. That is what I'm saying. Oh, he's bringing the thunder. Thunder, lightning. Love it. It's so murdery. It's great. The chronicler closed his eyes and ran his hand over his face. The Earl would be furious, of course, no telling what it might take to get back in his good graces. Still, if that's the only way I can get it, I accept. I'm glad to hear it. The innkeeper relaxed into a half smile. Come now, it's 3 days. Really so unusual? The chronicler's serious expression returned. 3 days is quite unusual, but then again, some of the self-important seem to be leaking out of him. Then again, he made a gesture. You are Kavoth. The man called himself Coat, looked up behind his bottles. Full lip. baby?
Where's your leash?
In the car?
Both?
I don't know. Taking doggy out?
Yeah.
You want me to come?
No.
Okay.
I don't have her leash.
It's in the car.
Why are you both in the car?
Didn't. Let's see. The man who called himself Coat looked up behind his bottles, full-lip smile playing around his mouth. A spark was kindling behind his eyes, and he seemed taller. Yes, I suppose I am, Quoth said. His voice had iron in it. It's gonna go take the doggy running. I like taking the doggy running. Chapter 7. The beginning and the names of things. Ooh. This part, okay. Let's see, we're at 11 o'clock. Okay. Streaming over 3 hours, so cuts off in about 55 minutes, okay. The sunlight poured into the waystone. It was cool, fresh light, fitting for beginnings. It brushed past the miller as he set his water turning for the day. It lit the forge the smith was rekindling after 4 days of cold metal work. It touched draft horses hitched to wagons, and sickled blades glittering sharp and ready in the beginning of an autumn day. Inside the waystone, light fell across the chronicler's face and touched the beginning right there. A blank page waiting for the first words of a story. The light flowed across the bar, scattering 1,000 tiny rainbows beginnings in colored bottles, and climbed the wall around the sword as if searching for a final beginning. But when the light touched the sword, there were no beginnings to be seen. In fact, the light on the sword the light that the sword reflected was dull and brandished of ages of old. Looking at it, the chronicler remembered that though it was the beginning of the day, it was also late autumn and growing colder. The sword shone with the knowledge that the dawn was yet a small beginning compared to the end of the season and the ending of a year. The chronicler pulled his eyes from the sword, aware that Kavoth had said something, but not knowing what. I beg your pardon? How do people normally go about relating their stories? Kavoth asked. The chronicler shrugged. Most people just tell me what they remember. Later I record the events in their proper order, remove unnecessary pieces, clarifying and simplifying, that sort of thing. Kavoth frowned. I don't think that'll do. The chronicler gave him a shy smile. Storytellers are always different. Thank you for the host. I really appreciate it. Thank you, thank you. Ooh, story time. Hi, Heck. We're reading Patrick Rothfuss, Name of the Wind. Since I'm hurting too much to game today. How are you? I'm good. I had 2 MRIs today, contrast dye, and lidocaine injected down and around my bone and the joint of my hip. So, yes. That is life. Some people prefer their stories to be left alone, but they also prefer an attentive audience. I usually listen and I record. Oh, guy's voice. And I usually listen and record later. I have nearly a perfect memory. Nearly perfect doesn't quite suit me, Kavoth said, pressing a finger against his lips. How fast can you write? The chronicler gave a knowing smile. Faster than a man can talk. Kavoth raised an eyebrow. I'd like to see that. The chronicler opened his satchel, brought out a stack of fine white paper and a bottle of ink. After arranging them carefully, he dipped the pen and looked expectantly at Kavoth. I'm good. I'm so happy you're getting better treatment now. Thanks, heck. Wrath of Babushka. Hey, dude, what are you doing? Did you post that recipe? Sorry to interrupt the story. Yes, I posted the recipe. It's in the general part of Discord, I think. I took a picture of it. I did it like 2 minutes after I ended the stream. The chronicler opened a satchel, brought a stack of fine white paper and a bottle of ink, and after arranging them carefully, he dipped the pen and looked expectantly at Kavoth. Do you drink beer? Nah, I drink tea and hot cocoa. I'm on so many medications, sometimes I just don't drink alcohol anymore. Kavoth sat forward in his chair and spoke quickly. I am, we are, she is, he was, they will be. The chronicler's pen danced and scratched down on the page as Kavoth watched it. I, chronicler, do hereby vow that I can neither read nor write, supine, irreverent, jackjaw, courts, lacquer, egalient, lino atua soren he. There was a young widow from Phaeton, whose morals were hard as rock. She went to confession for her true obsession. Kavoth leaned forward to watch the chronicler as he wrote. Interesting. Well, you may stop. So it's like his superpower. He can write really fast. Wow, that is a fantastic superpower, Mr. Chronicler. Well, I guess if you're a scribe, it's such an underrated skill. It's like no matter what you say to me, I can have it instantly written down. Bullshit. I don't want that power. I don't want that superpower. The chronicler smiled again, wiped his pen on a piece of cloth. The page in front of him held a single line of incomprehensible syllables. Oh, symbols. Some sort of cipher? Kavoth wondered aloud. Very neatly done, too. But you don't spoil many pages. He turned the sheet to look at the writing more carefully. I never spoil pages, the chronicler said haughtily. I type pretty fast, but no. I know, no one wants that superpower. Kavoth nodded without looking up. What does egalient mean? The chronicler asked. Oh, nothing. I made it up. I wanted to see if an unfamiliar word would slow you down. He stretched and pulled his chair closer to the chronicler. As soon as you show me how to read this, we can begin. The chronicler looked doubtful. It's very complex. Seeing Kavoth frown, he sighed. I'll try. The chronicler drew a deep breath and began to write a line of symbols as he spoke. There are around 50 different sounds we use to speak. I've given each of them a symbol consisting of 1 or 2 pen strokes. It's all a sound. I could conceivably transcribe a language I don't even understand, he pointed. These are all different vowel sounds. All vertical lines, Kavoth said, looking intently at the page. The chronicler paused, looking thrown off his stride. Well, yes. The consonants. Would they be horizontal then? They would combine like this? Take the pen. Yeah, that power would just land you a mid-level job, no joke. Hi, puppers. Ooh, Esteban, thank you so much for the stars. I really appreciate that, buddy.
Consugmatic. Call him Sugmatic.
What's that?
Just call him Sugmatic.
Sugmatic? Sugmatic. What up? It makes me feel like a gangster, like I'm the whitest person saying I'm a gangster. Only time I feel gangsta is when I'm rapping Eminem. Mm-hmm. The chronicler watched Kavoth quietly. Kavoth didn't notice his attention on the paper. If this is M, then these must be ah sounds. He motioned to a group of characters the chronicler had penned. Ah, A, E, ah would make the O's. Kavoth nodded to himself and pressed the pen back into the chronicler's hand. Show me the consonants. The chronicler penned them down numbly, reciting the words as he wrote. After a moment, Kavoth took the pen and completed the list himself, asking the dumbfounded chronicler to correct him if he made a mistake. The chronicler watched and listened as Kavoth completed the list. From beginning to end, the whole process took 15 minutes, and he made no mistakes. Wonderfully efficient system, Kavoth said appreciatively. Very logical. Did you design it yourself? The chronicler took a long moment before he spoke, staring at the rows of characters on the page in front of Kavoth. Finally, disregarding Kavoth's question, the chronicler asked, Did you really learn Tima in a day? Better recognize all PUBG ID. Oh, okay. My power is out, so I think we're going to call it a night. Good night. Good night, Heck. Sleep well. So literally, in 15 minutes, Kavoth learned his decipherable language. It's like being fluent in a foreign language, being able to read and write it in 15 minutes. It's inhuman. It's inhuman. It's insane. Kavoth gave a faint smile and looked down at the table. That's an old story. I almost forgotten. It took a day and a half, actually. A day and a half with no sleep. Why do you ask? I heard about it in university. Never really believed it. He looked down at the page of his cipher in Kavoth's neat handwriting. All of it? Kavoth looked puzzled. What? Did you learn the whole language? No, of course not, Kavoth said, rather testily. Only a portion of it. A large portion, to be sure, but I don't believe you can ever learn any of all one thing, let alone a language. Made for skins. Hashtag. That would be awesome. It's like Google. You are Google, but more efficient. And you don't even need like Wi-Fi. Kavoth held up a hand to keep the chronicler from writing and spoke. I've never told the story before, and I doubt I'll ever tell it again. Kavoth leaned forward in his chair. Before we begin, you must remember that I am of the Edmund Raw. We were telling stories before Calputna was burned, before there were books to write in, before there was music to play. When the first fire kindled, we Ra were there spinning stories in the circles of its flickering light. The innkeeper nodded to the scribe. I know your reputation as a great collector of stories and recorded events. Kavoth's eyes became hard as flint and sharp as broken glass. That said, do not presume to change a word of what I say. If I seem to wander, if I seem to stray, remember that true stories seldom take the straightest way. The chronicler nodded solemnly, trying to imagine the mind that could break apart his cipher into pieces in under a half hour. A mind that could learn a language in a day. Kavoth gave a gentle smile and looked around the room, as if fixing it to his memory. The chronicler dipped his pen, and Kavoth looked at his folded hands for as long as 3 deep breaths, and then he began to speak. In some ways, it began when I heard her singing, her voice twining, mixing with my own. Her voice was like the portrait of her soul, wild as fire, sharp as shattered glass, and sweet and clean as clover. Kavoth shook his head. No, it began in university. I went to learn magic, of the sort that they talk about in stories. magic like Torbjorn the Great, and I wanted to learn the name of the wind. I wanted fire and lightning. I wanted answers to 10,000 questions and access to their archives. But what I found at the university was a much different than a story. I was very much dismayed. But I expect the true beginning lies in what led me to the university with unexpected fires in the twilight. A man with eyes like ice and the bottom of a well, the smell of blood and burning hair, the Chandrian. He nodded to himself. Yes, I suppose that's where we'll begin. This is in many ways a story about the Chandrian. Kvothe shook his head as if to free himself of some dark thought. But I suppose I must go back even further. If this is going to be the resembling of my book and of a book of my deeds, I can spare the time, and it'll be worth it if I am remembered, if not flatteringly, then at least with some small amount of accuracy. But what would my father say if he had heard me telling a story this way? Beginning at the beginning, well, if we were to have a telling, let's make it a proper one. Kvothe sat forward in his chair. In the beginning, as far as I know, the world spun out of a nameless void by Alpeth, who gave everything a name, or depending on the version of the tale, found names in all things already possessed. The chronicler let slip a small laugh, though he did not look up from his page or pause his writing. Kvothe continued smiling. I see you laugh. Very well. For simplicity's sake, let us assume that I am the center of creation. In doing this, let us pass over innumerable boring stories, the rise and fall of empires, sagas, heroism, ballads of tragic love. Let us hurry forward and only take the tale of real importance. His smile broadened. Mine. Good night, Obi-Wan. Sleep well. My name is Kvothe, pronounced nearly the same as Quoth. Names are important as they tell you a great deal about the person, and I've had more names than anyone has a right to. The Adam called me Madre, which, depending on how it's spoken, can mean the flame, the thunder, or the broken tree. Hi, Jared. The flame is obvious if you've ever seen me. I have red hair. It's bright. If I had been born a couple 100 years ago, I probably would have been burned as a demon. I keep it short because it's unruly. When left to its own devices, it sticks straight up and makes me look as if I've set it afire. The thunder I attribute to being a strong baritone and a great deal of stage training in my early age. I never thought of the broken tree as very significant, although in retrospect I suppose it could be considered at least partially prophetic. My first mentor called me Elir because I was clever and I knew it. My first real lover called me the Dulator because she liked the sound of it. I have been called the Shadakar, the Light Finger, the Sixth String. I've been called Kvothe the Bloodless, Kvothe the Arcane, Kvothe the Kingkiller. I have earned those names, bought and paid for them. But I was brought up as Kvothe. My father once told me it meant to know. I have, of course, been called many things, most of them uncouth, although very few were unearned. I have stolen princesses back from sleeping barrowed kings. I burned down the town of Trebon. I spent the night with Florian and left with both my sanity and my life. I was expelled from university at a younger age than most people were allowed in. I tread paths by moonlight that other people fear to speak of during the day. I have talked with gods, loved women, and written songs that make minstrels weep. You may have heard of me. Chapter 8. Thieves, Heretics, and Whores. If this story is to be something resembling my books of deeds, we must begin at the beginning, at the heart of who I truly am. To do this, you must remember that before I was anything else, I was one of the Edmund Ra. The fuck kind of book is this? It is an episodic journey where we are killing demons and hierarchies. Contrary to popular belief, not all traveling performers are of the Ra. My troupe were not some poor batch of murmurers, gaping at crossroads, pennies, and singing for their supporters. We were court performers, Lord Greyfall's men. Our arrival in most towns were more of an event than the midwinter pageantry and Solonid games rolled together. There was usually at least 8 wagons in our troupe, and well over a dozen performers, actors, and acrobats, musicians, hand magicians, jugglers, and jesters. They were my family. My father was a better actor and musician than any you have ever seen. My mother had a natural gift for words. They were both beautiful, with dark hair and easy laughter. They were raw down to their bones, and that really is all that needs to be said. Save perhaps that my mother was noble before she was a trooper. She told me that my father had lured her away from a miserable jury hell with sweet music and sweeter words. I could only assume she meant the three crossings, where we had met and visited relatives when I was very young, and only once. My parents were never really married, which meant they never really bothered making their relationship official with any church. I'm not embarrassed by that fact. They considered themselves married and didn't see much point in announcing it to any government or God. I respect that. In truth, they seemed more content and faithful than any officially married couple I'd ever seen. Our patron was Baron Greyfellow, and his name opened many doors that would have ordinarily been closed to Edmund Ra. In return, we wore his colors, green and gray, and added to his reputation wherever we went. Once a year, we spent 2 span at his manor, so don't forget, a span. So 2 span is 22 days. Once a year, we spent 2 span at his manor, entertaining him and his household. It was a happy childhood growing up in the center of an endless fair. My father would read to me from the great monologues during the large wagon rides between towns. Reciting mostly from memory, his voice would roll down the road for a quarter mile. I remember reading along, coming into the secondary parts. My father would encourage me to try particularly good sections myself, and I learned to love the feel for good words. Am I a little out of focus? No, we're okay. My mother and I would make up songs together. Other times my parents would act out of romantic dialogues while I followed along in the books. They seemed like games at the time. Little did I know how cunningly I was being taught. I was a curious child, quick with questions, eager to learn. With acrobats and actors as my teachers, it was little wonder I'd ever grew to dread the lessons, as most children do. The roads were safer in those days, but cautious folks would still travel with our troop for safety's sake. This supplemented my education. I learned electric smattering from a Commonwealth law, from a traveling barista or two, too drunk or too pompous to realize that he was lecturing an 8-year-old. I learned woodwork from a huntsman in Lacaith who traveled with us for nearly a whole season. I learned the sordid inner workings of a royal court from Modeg, a courtesan. He was as my father used to say, call a jack, call a spade, but always call a whore a lady. Their lives are hard enough, and it never hurts to be polite. Tara smelled vaguely of cinnamon, and at 9 years old, I found her fascinating without exactly knowing why. She taught me I should never do anything in private that I wouldn't want talked about in public, and cautioned me not to talk in my sleep. And then there was Abinthy, my first real teacher. He taught me more than all the others set to in the end. If not for him, I never would have become the man I am today. I ask you not to hold it against him. He did mean well. You'll have to move along, the mayor said. Camp outside of town and no one will bother you just so as long as you don't start any fights or wander off with anything that isn't yours. He gave my father a significant look. Then be on your merry way out tomorrow. No performances. They're more trouble than they're worth. We are licensed, my father said, and pulling off his folder of the parchment from the inner part of his jacket. Charged to perform, in fact. The mayor shook his head with no motion and took the writ of passage. It makes folks rowdy, he said firmly. Last time there was unrowdiness and unholy roll during a play. Too much drinking, too much excitement. Folks tore down doors in the public house and they smashed up the tables. And the hall belongs to the town, you see, and the town bears the expense of the repairs. By this time, our wagons were drawing attention. Trip was doing some juggling. Mary and his wife were putting an impromptu string puppet show. I was watching my father from the back of our wagons. We certainly would not want to offend you or our patrons, the mayor said. However, the town can ill afford anything after an event such as that. As a gesture of goodwill, I'm willing to offer you a copper each, say 20 pennies simply to be on your way and not make trouble for us here. Now, you have to understand that 20 pennies might be good sort of money for a little ragamuffin troupe living hand to mouth, but for us, it was simply insulting. You should have offered us 40 to play the evening. Free use of the public hall, a good meal, beds at the inn. Lest we would graciously decline their beds, and no doubt they would have been lousy anyways. If my father was surprised or insulted, he didn't show it. Pack up, he shouted over his shoulder. Trip tucked his juggling stones in various pockets, without so much as a flourish. There was disappointed chorus from several dozen townsfolk who had been watching the puppets. I'll be sure to tell the Baron of your generosity, my father said carefully, as the mayor laid pennies in his hand. The mayor froze. Baron? Baron Greyfellow, my father paused, looking for some spark of recognition in the mayor's face. Lord of the Eastern Martians, humdiggering the Theron and the Wayconton Hills. My father looked around the horizon. We are still in the Waycont Hills, aren't we? Well, yes, the mayor said. But Squire Selman. Oh, we're in Selman's fief, my father exclaimed, looking around as if just now getting his bearings. Thin gentleman, tidy little beard. He brushed his chin with his fingers. The mayor nodded dumbly. Charming fellow, lovely singing voice. Met him when we were entertaining the Baron last midwinter. Oh, of course, the mayor paused significantly. Might I see your writ? I watched as the mayor read it. It took him a little while, as my father had not bothered to mention the majority of the Baron's titles, such as the Viscount of Metron and the Lord of Tresledon, shot up in the list it was. It was true the Squire Selman controlled this little town, and all the land around it, but Selman owed the fealty directly to Greyfellow. In more concrete terms, Greyfellow was captain of the ship. Selman scrubbed the planking and saluted him. The mayor refolded the parchment and handed it back to my father. I see. And that was all. I remember being stunned when the mayor didn't apologize or offer my father more money. My father paused as well, then continued. The city is your jurisdiction, sir, and will perform either way. It will either be here or just outside the city limits. He says, you can't use the public house. We don't want to have it a wreck again. We can play right here, my father pointed to the market square. It's big enough a space and it keeps everyone right in town. The mayor hesitated, though I could hardly believe it. We sometimes chose to play on the green because the local buildings weren't big enough. 2 of our wagons were built as stage stages just for that eventuality. But my whole team, in my whole 11 years of memory, I could barely count on both hands the times we'd been forced to play on the green. I know water. Dying. Slowly dying. Yeah. But we were spared that. The mayor nodded at last and gestured that my father come closer. We slipped out the back of the wagon and moved close enough to catch the end of what he said. God-fearing folk around here. Nothing vulgar or hysterical. We had a double handful of trouble last time a troop came through here. 2 fights. Folks missing their laundry, and one Branston's daughters got herself in a family kind of way. So that's politely saying she got knocked up. Loosey-goosey got knocked up. I was outraged. I waited for my father to show the mayor the sharp side of his tongue, to explain the difference between mere traveling performers and the Edmund Raw. We didn't steal. And we would never do things so out of control that a bunch of drunks would ruin a whole hall that we were playing. But my father did nothing of the sort. He just nodded and walked back toward our wagon. He gestured, and Trip started to juggle again. The puppets re-emerged from their cases. As he came around the wagon, he saw me standing, half hidden behind the horses. I'm guessing you heard the whole thing from the look on your face. Let it go, my boy. He has full marks for honesty, if not grace. And he just says it out louder where some folks decide to keep it quiet in their hearts. Halfpennies a head, that's right. Anyone with a head gets in free, thank you, sir. Trip was working the door, making sure that everyone got paid to see the play. Half a penny a head, throw a rosy glow on your lady's cheeks. I should be charging you that at least a head and a half. Not only is it none of my business, mind you. Trip had the quickest tongue of anyone in the troupe, which made him the best man for the job and making sure that no one tried to fast talk or bully their way inside. Hello, Mum. No charge for the little one, but if he starts to squawk, you best give him a little quick whack and take him outside. That's right, half a penny, yes, sir. Empty heads still pay full price. That was always fun to watch Trip work. Most of my attention was on the wagon that had rolled through the end of town about a quarter hour ago. The mayor had argued with the old man that was driving it, then stormed off. Now, I saw the mayor was heading back to the wagon, accompanied by a tall fella, carrying a low cudgel and a constable, unless I had missed my guess. My curiosity got the best of me. I made my way toward the wagon, doing my best to stay out of sight, and the mayor and the old man were arguing by the time I got close enough to hear. The constable stood by, looking irritated and anxious. Told you, I don't have a license. I don't need a license. Does a peddler need a license? Does a tinker need a license? You're not a tinker, the mayor said. Don't try to pass yourself off as one. I'm not trying to pass myself off as anything, the old man snapped. I'm a tinker and a peddler, and I'm more than both. I'm an arcanist, a great dithering heap of an idiot. My point exactly, the mayor said doggedly. We are God-fearing people in these parts, and we don't want you meddling with dark things that are better left alone. And we don't want your kind of trouble, the kind of trouble your kind brings. My kind. What do you know about my kind? There probably hasn't been an arcanist in these parts for at least 50 years. And we like it that way. Just turn around and go back where you came. Like hell if I'm spending another night in the rain because of your thick head, the old man said hotly. I don't need your permission to rent a room or do business in the street. Now get away from me, or I'll show you firsthand what kind of trouble my kind can be. Fear flashed across the mayor's face before it was overwhelmed with outrage. He gestured one shoulder over to the constable. "Then you'll spend the night in jail for vagrancy and threatening behavior. We'll let you on your way out in the morning if you keep a civil tongue in your head." The constable advanced on the wagon, his cudgel held cautiously to the side. The old man stood his ground and raised a hand. Deep red light welled up in front of the corners of the wagon. "That's far enough," he said ominously. "Things could get ugly otherwise." After a moment's surprise, I realized a strange light coming from a pair of lamps where the old man had mounted at his wagon. It seemed before the Lord Greyfellow's library. They were bright, and they were gaslights, steadier than candles or lamps, and they lasted forever. They were also terribly expensive. I was willing to bet that no one in this little town had ever heard of them, let alone seen one. The mayor is racist. This is true. Hi, Ronnie, you divas, not me divas. Just taking small pauses to drink because my throat's getting really dry. This is more talking than I do when I'm streaming. The constable stopped in his tracks, and the lights began to swell. He did nothing, but his jaw kept dropping down to the ground as he kept walking toward the wagon. The old man's expression grew anxious. "Now hold on a minute," he said as the red light from the wagon started to fade. "We don't want—" "Shut your clapper, you old shite-fire," the constable said, and he snatched the arcane in his arms as if he were sticking his hand into the oven. Then when nothing happened, he smiled and grew more confident. "Don't think I won't knock you over a good one and keep working more of your delivery." "Well done, Tom," the mayor said, radiating relief. "Bring him along and we'll send someone back for the wagon." The constable grinned and twisted the old man's arm. The arcane is bent at the waist and gasped a short fit of painful breath. From where I hid, I saw the arcane's face change from anxious to pained to angry all in 1 second. I saw his mouth move. A furious gust of wind. Okay, we'll stop. There's little floaties for my slippers everywhere. A furious gust of wind came out of nowhere as if a storm suddenly had burst in with no warning. The wind struck the old man's wagon and tipped it onto 2 wheels before slamming it back down on all 4. The constable staggered and fell as if he'd been struck by the hand of God. Even where I hid nearly 30 feet away, the wind was so strong I was forced to take a step backward, as if I'd been pushed roughly from behind. "Begone!" the old man shouted angrily. "Trouble me no longer. I will set fire to your blood and fill your fear with the ice of demons." Whoa. 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 There's something familiar about his words, but I couldn't put my finger on it. Both the mayor and the constable turned tail and ran, their eyes white and wild as startled horses. The wild faded away quickly as it had come. The wind had faded as quickly as it had come. The whole sudden burst could have lasted more than 5 seconds. As most of the townsfolk were gathered around the public house, I doubted anyone, except for us, had seen it. Leave this place clean of your foul presence," the Arcanist muttered to himself as he watched him go. "By the power of my name, I command it to be so." I finally realized that his words did seem familiar, and he was quoting lines from the exorcism scene in Deosia. He was quoting movie lines, and it scared the mayor and the constable. That's so funny. That's so funny. Jeez Louise. The old man turned back to his wagon and began to extemporize. "Turn you into a burner on a hot summer day. I'll turn you into a poet with the soul of a priest. I'll fill you with lemon custard and push you out a window." He spat Bastards. His irritation seemed to leave him, and he heaved with a great weary sigh. Well, that couldn't have gone much worse, the old man muttered, as he began rubbing his shoulder on his arm where the constable had twisted. Do you think they'll come back with a mob behind them? For a second, I thought the old man was talking to me, and then I realized he was actually just talking to one of his donkeys. Are you guys basically my donkeys? Like... I mean, who am I talking to? My donkeys. Maybe it's late and I'm tired, but it's laughable. You are all donkeys now. Okay, I'm gonna make a note. Alright. That's okay, so I'm making a note. Hello, donkey. That's how I'm gonna start most of my streams henceforth. Okay. For a second, I thought the old man was talking to me, and then I realized the truth. He was just talking to one of his donkeys. I don't think so either, he said. But I've been wrong before. Let's stay near the edge of town and have a look at the last of those, shall we? And clambered up to the back of the wagon, came down with a wide bucket, and began emptying his burlap sack. He upended the sack into the bucket and seemed disheartened by the results. He took out a handful himself before nudging the bucket towards the donkeys with his foot. Don't give me that look, he said. It's short rations all around. Besides, you can graze. He petted one donkey while he ate a handful of oats. I can't get over it. Talking to donkeys. Donkey. Hello, donkey. We've wandered too far from civilization. We've wandered too far from civilization, boys. The folks that need me don't trust me, and the ones that trust me can't afford me. The old man peered into his purse. We've got a penny and a half, so our options are kind of limited. Do we want to be wet tonight or hungry tomorrow? We're not gonna do any business, so it will be one or the other. I slunk behind the edge of the building until I could see what was written on the side of the old man's wagon. It read, Abinthy, Arcanist Extraordinaire, Scribe, Dowser, Chemist, Dentist, Rare Goods, all ailments tended, lost items found, anything mended, no horoscopes, no love potions, no malfaction. Yep, that's his title. They don't do donkey, they don't do. Abinthy noticed me as soon as I stepped from behind the building I had been hiding. Hello there, can I help you? You've misspelled ailments, I pointed out. He looked surprised. It's a joke, actually. I brew a bit. Oh, ale, I said, nodding. I get it. I brought my hand out of my pocket. Can you sell me anything for a penny? He seemed stuck between amusement and curiosity. What are you looking for? I'd like some lacilium. We performed the Farron of the Friar a few dozen times last month, and it filled my young mind with intrigue and assassination. Are you expecting someone to poison you? He said, somewhat taken aback. No, not really. It just seems to me that if you want to wait around to know that you need an antidote, it's probably too late to pick up one. I suppose I could sell you a penny's worth. That would be about the right dose for a person your size, but it's dangerous stuff in its own right. It only cures certain poisons. You can hurt yourself if you take it at the wrong time. Oh, I said, I didn't know that. In the play, it was touted around as an infallible cure-all. Evidently tapped his lips thoughtfully. Can you answer me a question in the meantime? I nodded. Whose troop is that? In a way, it's mine. But in another way, it's my father's, because he runs the show and points the wagon which way to go. But it's Baron Greyfellow's too, because he's our patron and Lord Greyfellow's men. The old man gave me a look, quite amused. I've heard of you. Good troop, good reputation. I nodded, not seeing any point in false modesty. Do you think your father might be interested in taking on any help? He asked. I don't claim to be much of an actor, but I am handy to have around. I could make you face paint and rouge that aren't all full of lead and mercury and arsenic. I can do lights too. Quick, clean, bright, different colors if you want them. I didn't have to think too hard about it. Candles were expensive and vulnerable to drafts. Torches were dirty and dangerous. And anyone in a troupe learned the dangers of cosmetics at an early age. It was hard to believe that some old seasoned trooper would have you paint poison on yourself every third day and end up raving mad by the time you were 25. I may be overstepping myself a little, I said as I held out a hand for him to shake, but let me be the first one to welcome you into our troop. And then they shake hands. Okay, let's see. We're almost at our 4-hour mark. We're almost done with the chapter. If this is to be a full and honest account of my life and deeds, I feel I should mention that the reasons for my inviting Ben into our troop were not entirely altruistic. It's true that quality cosmetics and clean lights were a welcome addition to our troop, but it's also true that I felt sorry for the old man alone on the road. But underneath it all, I was moved by curiosity. I had seen Abernathy do something I could not explain. Something strange and wonderful. Not his trick with sympathy lamps. I recognized that for what it was. Showmanship. Bluff to impress ignorant townsfolk. What he had done afterwards was different. Hey, Kristen. Look at... I'm reading, bruh. If you want to go see stuff like that, use YouTube. What he had done afterwards was different. He called the wind, and the wind came. It was magic. Real magic. The sort of magic I had heard about in the stories of Tabler the Great. The sort of magic I hadn't believed in since I was 6. Now I didn't know what to believe. So I invited him into our troop, hoping to find answers to my questions. Though I didn't know it at the time, I was looking for the name of the wind. Haha! And like that, they put the name of the book inside of the chapter. I always am amused when they can sneak in the name of their title. Okay, you guys. That was our first storytelling stream. Like reading a book during nighttime. We have so many books we can go through. That was like really good. So we're 4 hours in. We had a lot of distractions with a lot of new people coming in. Some of them being dumbasses, but we always kick those really quick. But yeah, that was a lot of fun. You guys don't forget to follow, like, subscribe if you haven't. If you invite me to the next one, for sure. It'll probably be a nighttime stream or a daytime stream. I don't know. What's tomorrow? Tomorrow is American Thanksgiving. I don't personally celebrate it, but my significant other and his family does. So I will be doing that with them tomorrow. If I have free time in the evening, you will see me streaming Rainbow Six Siege with the Catzilla, my bestie extraordinaire. So just know that I love your faces. You're all wonderful donkeys. And I'll catch you later. Good night, y'all. Eat all. Eat all.